Good evening, as drawn at
Kelly.
6:30. We have a quorum. I would like to start the meeting, if we may. We have 6 members, I think we're missing 3. First item on my agenda always is citizens' participation. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to make any statement, comment, whatever, for the committee before we start? Next item on the agenda is the September 14th minutes. Minutes.
A motion to approve minutes of 14 September.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of September 14th. Discussion. Do we have any corrections? All right. As a matter of fact, I do have some corrections. Kelly, if you would, on page 2. Mr. Paulson spoke on capital improvements that had to do with the buses. I believe he said the request for 7 school buses is potentially $2 million spent this year. I think his question was, he stated the request for 7 school buses annually is potentially $2 million over 3 and $5 million over a 5-year period.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it, Frank.
I'm sorry. On page 2, there was a comment by, she's recording a comment, Mr. Paulson, on capital improvements, stated the request for 7 school buses is potentially a $2 million expenditure over a 3-year period and a possible $5 million over a 5-year period. I'm asking to insert the word annually after the word school buses, because that's pretty much what his analysis was. We have lease payments and buyouts. And also on page 6, about the middle of the page, Mr. Trudell reported Selectman Winslow was at the recent Capital Planning Committee meeting. The Planning Committee meeting felt that a meeting between the Town Administrator, Capital Planning Committee, Library Directors, Friends of the Library, and I thought the Library Foundation was mentioned as well. So, Dave?
I can't, after I got past the Friends of the Library and the Directors of the Library, I can't answer the Friends of the
Okay, then we'll leave it as it is.
Okay.
The next sentence, Ms. Pickett asked for a recap of the liaison procedures, especially as they pertain. On page 7 at the top, Mr. Gray stated the town administrator has the authority to hire a town accountant. The town accountant should be the town administrator, has asked the spring meeting, etc. Next meeting date and time. FinCom may hold another meeting between the 21st and 20th. I'm sorry, you're right on that one. That's fine. That's the only corrections I have. My compliments for getting these minutes ready as fast as you did. Anyone else have any corrections, adjustments?
What was your last one, Frank?
At the top of page 7, the second line should read the town administrator, not the town accountant. Top of page 7.
Okay.
It says the town accountant. It should be the town administrator. Seeing no further corrections, additions, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 4, 5, 6, 7.
I abstained, I wasn't here.
601. Seven. 601. All right. Before we progress any further, during our warrant article discussions last meeting, I made a comment directly to a member of the committee that was inappropriate and a clear violation of our committee rules and parliamentary procedure as well. I would ask the committee, the presiding chairman from that evening, And most importantly, the individual, Mr. Paulson, to accept my personal apology for such a clear violation of the rules of the Finance Committee. My apologies, gentlemen. Was quite inappropriate. That said, we'll move on to the, it's on here as Town Administrator support for the
Mr.
CPC.
Chairman,
Yes,
if I
Mr.
might.
Paulson.
I don't think it was a violation. You say it's a violation. I take exception to that. I accept your apology.
Well, I addressed you directly by parliamentary procedure. I'm not supposed to. Okay.
His point was that since I was chairing the meeting, it should have come to me, through me to you. I didn't
Right.
feel it was a violation either, Mr. Paulson, but he did, and I accept his view.
By parliamentary procedure, I can address you as my colleague, a former speaker, et cetera, or many different ways, Dick. It's just, I'm trying to make sure that we...
I accept the apology.
Okay.
But I stand by what I just
deserve
said.
it. Okay, that's fine.
And what Mr. Trudell also just suggested or said, that
That's
he
right.
thought, and I think, it was not a violation.
Okay. Moving forward, Mr. Town Administrator, the CPC's requested,
Mr.
if they
Chairman,
could
I
move
refer
first.
to the CPC. We have one quick article to do, which I'm sure that we have no questions on, and I would refer to the CPC. That would be your pleasure.
Yes, if I would, please. Go on. Oh, you have to let them sit there. I would also like to remind everyone that our meetings are video recorded, and they are televised over the weekend. If you would like to know the exact times, I would recommend to you that you check WCTV's internet site under the government channel. Good evening. Your first article is, I believe your first article is number 12.
Before we start, I'm Sandy Slavin, I'm the treasurer of CPC. I'm Angela Dunham, chair of CPC. I want the FinCom to know that I spent some time with the accountant this morning and have been able to confirm the administrative cost for CPC in FY11 matches my numbers with her numbers, so that I'm comfortable with that. I have also taken a look at the reserve numbers. We are off exactly the article from special town meeting, which has not been posted by the account yet, so we're there with the reserve numbers. So I'm very comfortable with the numbers we have available for us and what was expensed. All the open projects, I match to the dollar that's on the accountant's book. So I want FinCom to realize I'm very comfortable with the numbers that are available, what the town has, and what we have in CPC. And to that end, I'm going to pass out what is referred to as the, what is it called? The Weston?
Well, we not call it the Wareham.
No.
So I have one for each of the FinCom members and one for you for the minutes. I just passed it around. And that's just a consolidation of what we have had for all our projects. It has an idea of all the revenue that's been available. Our FY11 revenue has been confirmed by the tax department, our tax collector, and the FY12 is our estimated numbers. And on the back page for you, you have the debt amount for the Tremont and Bryant Farm, which I was asked for. So, just to be comfortable, we're comfortable with the numbers, so you can be comfortable with the numbers. Your turn.
Thank you. Article 12, to see if the town will vote to transfer the Community Preservation Fund FY 2012 estimated annual revenues, a sum of money to the Community Preservation Fund reserves for future appropriation as follows: $70,200 for affordable housing reserve, $5,100 for administration, and $240,149 for FY 2012 budget reserve, or to do or act in the manner relative thereof.
Just
Your
gonna
explanation, if you
Write
would.
out the explanation. This is a housekeeping article. These amounts are going into affordable housing and administration to meet the percentage required by law. CPA is required to set aside 10% to be spent in affordable housing, historic preservation, and open space. Additionally, the committee is allowed 5% of the revenues for administrative costs. The budgeted reserve is the CPC account balance after all our CPC articles pass.
The chair will entertain a motion for favorable action.
So moved.
Second? I'm sorry, second?
Second.
Mrs. Katui seconded. Discussion?
I just have a question. Is Agawam in this article at all, or is the CPC putting any side money for Agawam improvements?
Not specifically. I mean, we have at the end of all these articles, and all the articles in the fall town meeting passed, we have in affordable housing reserve $378,803. But there has been no application, no grant given to us for Agawam. All there was the $50,000 set aside for the doors to redo Agawam.
Is it, Mr. Chairman, through you,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Is it still feasible for the Agawam Village, or the Wareham Housing Authority, whomever, can they file for any funds from CPC at this time, or is it?
To answer the question?
To answer the question, we've passed our deadline for the fall town meeting.
Okay. But I think we all recognize on this committee that at least Agawam is near and dear to my heart, and I want to see it continue to improve. So I just wanted to ask that question.
To follow, we as a committee realize that there could very well be a major grant request coming for us for Westfield affordable housing too. So, I mean, there are two major projects looking for the funding that we have available of that $380,000.
Any further questions, discussion, comments? Seeing none, move to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Article passes 7-0. Article 13, see if the town will vote to transfer $55,000 into the Affordable Housing Reserve from previously approved but unexpended appropriations as follows. A, $5,000 appropriated for the affordable housing restriction approved under Article 45, Spring 2010. And B, $50,000 appropriated to hire a consultant for the Agawam Village Reconstruction project approved under Article 43, Spring 2010, or to act in any manner relative thereto.
Chairman, through you, the explanation for this is also a housekeeping article. CPC is returning money to accounts for completed projects. The $5,000 from Article 45, Spring 2010, comes from Mike LaCava and the Holden Realty Affordable Housing Project. The $50,000 is being returned from Article 43, Spring 2010, because Agawam Village did not need a consultant for the renovation.
Chair will entertain a motion for favorable action.
So moved.
Mrs. Katui has moved. Mr.
Second.
Goodell seconds. Discussion? Seeing none, I'm surprised. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
Well,
McDonald?
this is all new to me, so I'm trying to learn. This is through you, Chair.
Yes.
Just trying to learn. So, Agawam Village had a reconstruction project, and they're returning the money. They didn't use the money. Is that correct? Wow.
Answer the question?
Yes, I'm sorry. Through you, Mr. Chair. The money is being returned because they didn't need a consultant, and that was what the money had been for.
Mr. Frank?
Mr. Chairman, through you. It's, Larry, just to clarify that it was approved specifically for consulting. And they have so much work down there, they don't need a consultant yet to tell them to fix the roofs and the sidings and the windows and stuff like that. Unfortunately, the $50,000 couldn't be put in through, for roofs or something, well, that would have been nice, but evidently you can't, it was earmarked for consulting.
It was specifically set aside for a person to put together a grant request for about $70,000, and this was to cover 50,000 of it. And was Pam Sequoia
Yes.
withdrew her request for the 50,000 because they weren't going to use it for that purpose. And you're right, it had to be specific for that.
They're in a mess, they're in a real mess.
Just to finish up, if you don't mind.
Mr. McDonald?
Through you. They are in a mess. So I guess I'm trying to understand the procedure here. They have to come to the CPC and request money in order to receive money. There's not like a standing amount. It has to be through a grant process as well, or
Yes.
something along
Yes,
that
it
line.
has to be through, and it is very specific, and if it's not used for that purpose, the money must be returned.
And
That's not to say that it might not be used, reappropriated out to
Right,
another
right.
purpose, through another application for a different grant.
Just trying to get,
Mrs. Slavin?
in the Wareham site, under CPC, you will find a grant request format. So
okay,
if you want to take a look at what is required of a grant request, that's another place for you to look. And it also contains the rules which govern a CPC grant issuance.
thank you.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Bronk?
Can I ask a question of the CPC?
Through the chair, please.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Given the disarray that the housing authority appears to be experiencing, would it be to everyone's advantage, particularly the residents of Agawam, if maybe somebody from the board of the housing authority sat down with the CPC, and if the board members knew exactly what they could apply and what they couldn't apply for? Because that would help us all out, and coming to terms with the deplorable conditions down there.
Answer the question, please.
Yes, please. Isn't Don Hall on that?
He's on that committee, but he's not the chairperson any longer.
But he is representing that committee on CPC, so to me, he could be the source of your answers. He represents the housing authority on CPC. So to me, he could very well be your source of information.
Further? Any other questions?
I'll rest my case.
Seeing none? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0-0. Article 14, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund 2012 estimated annual revenue or any other monies in the Community Preservation Fund under open space the sum of $7,423 for payment of debt service on the property known as Bryant Farm, and further to appropriate under historic preservation the sum of $104,128 for payment for debt service on the property known as Tremont Nail, both voted for purchase by town meeting in April 2004, or to do or act in any manner relative thereto. Mr. Chairman?
The explanation. This is our final housekeeping article. It's our yearly debt service payment for Bryant Farm and Tremont Nail.
Chair will entertain favorable motion, a motion for favorable
So
action.
moved.
Mrs. Bronx, second. Mr. McDonald, discussion.
Very good.
Mr. Paulson.
Tremont Nail's been around for several years, obviously. And one question I have, Mr. Chairman, is what was the original purchase price? Which is not of this.
Answer the question.
The best I can tell, the bond, I think the bond payment, as I said here, they bonded the principal of $1,265,930, and I believe there was an article taking it out of CPC for $126,594. So the two of them together would be the cost that that article approved in FY05.
Paulson?
A further question then, I noticed, and I thank you for that I noticed for 2011 that we have a roof, or it says, I see in plural there, roofs, but an expenditure, expected expenditure, or an expenditure of $245,000. My question is really of two parts. Has that money been expended? And secondly, are there any other roofs that have to be taken care of on Tremont Nail?
On that handout, it indicated that the $245,000 of this $9,250 has been expended on that particular project, and it is for 3 roofs. It is for the main factory roof, the little one next to it that you see from Elm Street, and one in the back, and I can't remember which one in the back. I think it's the one that's along the river in the back. Is that the freight building?
Freight building.
Thank you, freight building. So, and it's my understanding the RFP went out, and I do not know what's happened since then.
But if I might
Yes.
continue the conversation, does that take care of all the roofs? Are we never to see another roof, a request for a roof appropriation on Tremont Nail?
To answer the
To
question?
answer, you'll see more. What you've done is this is necessary to keep the buildings from falling in. More will be done.
So these are,
Right now.
these are basically emergency repairs that are
Got
being
holes
done
in them,
now,
yes.
and there are others that are deteriorating and will need
Yes.
replacement?
Yes.
Mr. Paulson?
You anticipate that I'm going to ask a question, and you're quite right, I am. If we know that more roofs are going to fall in, I guess the obvious question is, why aren't we taking care of the issue all at one time to try to get some advantage from the standpoint, or potential standpoint, of the economies of scale? The roofer comes in, he does part of the job here, but there's more to do. He or she might get a better price, if you will, if they could do the whole thing at one time.
I think it's a correct question. I would also say we are straying a bit from the motion, all right, which is to pay for debt service, all right? But I think your point is well taken, and I would expect that the CPC at some point and the Tremont Nail Committee would in fact bring
Thank you, Mr.
such an issue
Chairman.
to the town's
Question
attention.
to you, but it is actually part of we're asked to vote on this article, which includes $245,000 for roofs. And I stand by my question. My question, I think, is a legitimate. I don't think you're saying it's not a legitimate question. To find out, or try to get some sense as to what the further cost might be, and correlated to that is why the CPC has not, apparently not, taken the roofing problem as a total problem. In other words, it come with not just $245,000, but perhaps for more than that. And the suggestion is there is going to be more than that.
To answer the question, the
Yes.
grant request came to us based on Tory Menders and Spencer's recommendation for emergency repair on those 3 particular roofs. The grant, we only act on what grant requests are submitted to us.
I understand. The motion, wait a minute, the motion is for debt service.
Yes, only
I don't
debt
understand how
service.
we got to the roofs. Mr. Trudell?
Well, that was my question. Was I still on Article 14, which is talking about debt service, or because that's what, I agree with Mr. Paulson's point, that I have some other questions to deal with the Tremont office. However, that's not the article that's in front of me, and that was my question to you, Mr. Chair, was that, and you're making it perfectly clear.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, to that point, one of the problems that at least, and now I'm speaking for myself here, you're all free to disagree with me, occasionally have in the past, it's fine. One of the difficulties I have, personally, is this almost insistence on taking a figure here today and not looking forward as to what the consequences might be. That is the genesis of my question about the roofs, and quite frankly, about anything else, where we're given a figure, and we talked about this, about the school bus, same kind of issue, different issue, I agree, and I won't get off track here. I just dislike and that's a strong word, and I understand it. I dislike being given one figure and not being told. And I'm not suggesting that there's anything amiss with CPC, quite the contrary. This is a very good portrayal, I appreciate it. But I would like to know, and I think the committee would like to know, and I think the town would like to know, what the forward costs might be in terms of articles that we're voting.
To answer the question,
Yes.
several years ago, we contracted with vendors, Tory and Spencer, I always get them mixed up, to do a property analysis at Tremont Nail study of all the buildings, what was wrong, what's right, what the cost would be. All that total cost is available online under the CPC website at the town on the Wareham site. So that has every single building identified and what it would cost to bring it up, to save it. So the cost is available. I honestly do not remember what it was. It's been a while since I looked at that study. I can go into it and pull out the estimated cost of roof repairs of all the buildings, but I just don't have it on the tip of my fingers.
Good look at that. Mr. McDonald, you wish to say something?
I was actually, through you, I understand what Mr. Paulson is saying. We're paying a debt service, and again, I agree this has to be done, but what is the long-term disposition of Tremont now? I mean, we're paying the debt service, and I think that's what he's trying to say is, what are we gonna do with it? Are we gonna keep, is it going to be a giant money pit? Or do we have plans for it? Is that, I think that's what he's asking. I don't know, that's not really for this, but.
Mrs. Katui?
I empathize with my colleagues here at this table. However, I really think we need to focus in on exactly the article we're looking at right at the moment here. We bought it. We got to pay for it. All right? We need to decide whether we're going to pay for this debt service. That's where we need to focus right now, and I would really like to do that. Thank you.
Well spoken. Anyone else have a comment? Mr. Gray? You look like you might have something to say.
No?
Mrs. Bronk?
Bring it on.
Seeing no further discussion, I'll move to a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 700. Article 15, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund FY 2012 unallocated fund or any other available monies under the category of historic preservation, the sum of $163,000 for the replacement of 2 rubber roofs and the painting and protection of all exterior wooden surfaces on the Memorial Town Hall consistent with existing historic preservation restrictions on the property or to do and act in any manner relative thereto. Mrs. Chairman?
Mr. Chair, the explanation is this article allows for the restoration of Memorial Town Hall. The 2 rubber roofs were not included in the original roofing project. This preservation project seeks to protect the building from further water damage.
Chair will entertain a motion for favorable action.
So moved.
Mr. Gray, second. Mrs. Katui. Discussion? Mr. Paulson?
Well, let me see if I understand this. In order to put the rubber roofs on, I guess I'm on a roof kick now, I apologize, but put the rubber roofs on, I assume we're gonna have to take off all the slate?
No,
Answer the question.
there is no slate on the existing roofs that we're discussing.
May I speak to answer? It is the section that's over the auditorium,
Okay.
Not the original. Not the original.
Okay.
not the slates that are being worked on. It's
Yeah, this is a little bit off point. Where do we stand with regard to the slate roofs? Just point of information.
That's well off point at this point. I don't know if you're prepared to answer those questions. Are you prepared? Yeah. No answer.
Sorry.
I was afraid of it.
As I said, it's off point.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that they would not necessarily have that information tonight because we weren't asked to have it. Mrs. Bronk?
Through you to, it's been something that's been dragging through the FinCom, the slate roof for years. I would have wanted to ask the question too, but
Any other questions? Comments? Seeing none, move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 700. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Community Events Committee.
What happened to 16?
Wrong one. What happened to 16? That's a good question. I turn the page. To see if the town will vote to transfer under the category of open space from FY 2012 estimated annual revenues or any other available monies the sum of $50,000 to the Wareham Conservation Fund established by town meeting under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8C, Article 47, Spring 1963, for which the Conservation Commission may use as necessary, provided, however, that any purchases made with such funds shall be subject to the restrictions and requirements of the Community Preservation Act, General Law, Chapter 44B, or to do and act in a manner relative thereto. Madam Chairman?
Mr. Chair, through you, the Community Preservation Act permits local communities to transfer sums of money into established trust funds that meet the requirements of the Community Preservation Law. The Conservation Fund has been established since spring of 1963. It will allow the Conservation Commission to respond rapidly to issues that qualify under the Community Preservation Act.
The Chair will entertain a motion for favorable action.
So moved.
Mrs. Brown, second.
Second.
Mrs. Cotilli. Discussion? Mrs. Cotilli.
Through you, I would ask, is this something new, or we have done this before? And my second part of the question is, will CPC be monitoring the expenditures?
Answer the question.
To answer the question through you, Mr. Chair, this has not been done before. However, it will go into an established conservation fund that is in existence since it states here, spring 1963. I believe that I put in information for distribution to the Finance Committee concerning conservation funds. I don't know if you got the information, but I can certainly furnish additional copies. And for example, I can read to you right off the coalition page here that says, for instance, a conservation fund enables a municipality to appropriate monies which the Conservation Commission may then spend without further action from the municipality's legislative body. And then it gives you an example. There's a link on the information I'll give you that gives you an example that came from the Department of Revenue to the town of Duxbury, as an example. CPA funds may be appropriated into the Conservation Fund and be spent on CPA eligible uses. So that's key here, is that it has to go by CPA law. It cannot be expended in any other manner. It would have to be reviewed and expended only according to those restrictions. The expenditure of these funds is subject to the restrictions imposed by CPA, such as the requirement that deed restrictions be placed on the properties, for example. So if folks did not get that,
I didn't.
I just passed it out right now.
There are links here that give you examples.
If I may?
Yes.
Oh, you didn't completely answer my question. My question was, and is the CPC going to be monitoring the expenditures that they do meet the requirements?
Yes.
Thank you.
Chair.
Mr. Trudell?
My
Through you
apologies.
to the chair of the CPC. Giving to the Conservation Commission $50,000, I have questions. How much money do they have on hand now? And why now are we looking to give them $50,000? I think that's a fair question in terms of, I don't know what they've done recently, I don't know what their funding is, and now all of a sudden we're going to give them $50,000. And it appears that it's a blank check. And I'm opposed to blank checks.
Understandably. I'm not sure what the amount is now.
To answer the question, it's my understanding there's about 30,000 in that account right now.
Other comments, Mr. Paulson?
This does not have anything about roofs in it, but let me just go to. What has been, if there's money in the account, and the account has been established, what's been done with the monies that were in the account prior to today?
To answer the question,
I'm not privy to that information, I've not researched it.
Mr. Friedel?
Through you, the chair, to the CPC committee. What you're saying to me is that you don't have the information available to what the Conservation Commission has done to reflect Mr. Paulson's question on my previous issue, yet we're willing to give them $50,000. I'm struggling real hard to come up with a positive aspect to this.
Mr. Chair, through you, to answer the question. These monies would be spent only under CPA law restrictions. And the only example I could give you, for instance, would be if we had, and this is my own example here, if we had, for instance, land that was contiguous to the town well area, for instance, the town wells, in order to protect perhaps a larger perimeter, if we had the opportunity to use these monies to hold that property and to protect the town well property. That's what I'm thinking. But that it wouldn't be exclusive to this. This is not project specific, to answer your question specifically. It's not project specific. However, if there was a project that we could act on quickly to keep a property from endangering that town well perimeter, this might be an example, but we would have to be going through CPA law. It wouldn't be expended without review. It wouldn't be a blank check to them for them to do whatever they please.
I'm not opposed to the Conservation Commission, because I think that there's some stuff that gets done, but your example to me is one that says, I think that there's land contiguous to the wells, and it would be a part of the Wareham Water Department to take the appropriate action rather than this. This is what I'm afraid is going to happen. Put $50,000 into their bank, and after that, poof. I don't see where there's checks and balances that are there to protect the $50,000. I'm not saying that they won't do good with the money. Just no checks and balances in my mind. And enough of my comment. I've spoken twice.
My question, I have a question. My question would be, would the future be every year $50,000 or a $50,000 number replenished?
Right now, it's a start. It's to put some funds in there. Suppose we're having land constantly coming out of agriculture. Is it 61, 60, 61A, 61B? Land comes available to the town, and the town is constantly turning it down because they can't respond quickly to the developer or the owner that's taking the land out. This is to give the Conservation Commission with CPC and the town to try to save some of that land that could be used for development. And yes, $50,000 is not a lot of money, but who's to say that maybe down the line there might be a project that's been approved for land that doesn't happen. Maybe that's be put in here. We don't know where it's going. This is a start. That's all this is let's see if we can start building this up into a fund to respond to land that becomes available to the town.
Mr. Chair, through you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
My
Mrs.
apologies.
Tui first, please.
I have a question, and I'm hoping somebody
Yes.
could answer it. It says the Wareham Conservation Fund established by town meeting. What is the normal revenue source of the Wareham Conservation Fund?
Answer the question. Anyone?
What's under Conservation Commission?
I do not know.
Mr. Town Administrator, is part of your annual budget the funding for the Conservation Commission, or is it a revolving fund? What?
Can the question be rephrased? I'm sorry.
What is the funding source for the Wareham Conservation Fund?
Mr. Chairman, through you, we have to check it. I know we did use some of the permitting to pay a portion of the conservation agent's salary at the previous town meeting, which is what this said to be $25,000, so at least $25,000.
Mr. Paulson?
Personally, I'm very sympathetic to putting funds aside for, I think it's 61D. Yes, I got the wrong chapter, I apologize. In any event, I understand that part of it. If the money was specifically appropriated for that purpose, specifically, I'd be in favor of this article, because I think that's a very good idea. But if it goes in generally for something else, which would include buying up the land, then I have reservations.
Any further comments, Mrs. Braun?
I just have a question. Is any of this money eligible to go toward conservation salaries?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, it is not. It would have to go through CPC law review. It cannot be used for salary.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, then we've got the right, we've got the fund on our side of the equation.
Okay.
It's a separate fund, so.
That's what I
don't know
thought.
Exactly, but thank you very much for that.
I move the question.
I think it's too soon to move the question. Is there any comments on that, Mr. McDonald?
Just a brief one for you. Where's the 50,000 coming from?
It's right, answer the question. It says right here is.
It is coming out of our CPC funds.
Okay.
Another, Mr. Gray, any questions? Chair would comment, it doesn't make sense to me personally why this would be done. We have a vehicle to transfer funds over. I understand that opportunities do possibly come up. I think I agree with Mr. Paulson. If we want to have that type of thing set aside, then we should have an article to that effect, that we would establish a 50,000 with the source of funding possibly being CPC or some other source. You know, so I would tend to agree with the other members that I don't see the purpose of doing this. I thought the monies in the CPC were to be used specifically for grants that were requested from the CPC.
Mr. Chair?
Yes?
I respectfully would ask that people look at the information that I had distributed earlier with the example from Boxford, for instance. If you could take a look at, what is it? It would be, it would be Article 26 in that Boxford example that has to do with conservation funds.
But this is new also, isn't it? It's not been done previously to Boxford. Is this a new interpretation of the law? Because this has never come up before, correct? Pardon?
I don't know if I'm answering you properly here. This was a 2006 article from Boxford, and it was presented, it was put out finally as an example of how it would be used. I understand what you were referring to, that you preferred it to be project specific. This is what you were saying.
Which is what it is today, going through the CPC. I don't understand putting money into community preservation to transfer it to other bodies. Okay, even though, yes, I understand, why wouldn't we put 50,000 into Affordable Housing Trust? Why wouldn't we put?
May I
Yes.
answer the question? In FY11, we put $60,000 into the Affordable Housing Trust from CPC to respond to issues that come up quickly, that can't wait for the 9-month cycle to go through town meeting, etc. So last year, the town put 60,000 into a trust fund for affordable housing. This is the 50,000 for open space trust fund, so to say, for open space. So, I mean, we've done that last year, and this is just taking it one step further to allow it to be to another one of the categories covered by CPC.
Mr. Fidel?
To that point, why is it not possible that the CPC asked to establish a fund for that purpose under the control of the CPC? And therefore, any decisions that you make in support of the conservation or any other fund would then become a public record, that we could look at. Right now, I'm looking at giving something at a 2-tier level. I don't understand why you can't put money aside for that purpose, have it approved at town meeting and controlled by the CPC. I don't like the thought of giving $50,000 to a trust, whether it's the Affordable Housing Trust or whether it's to the Conservation Fund. I want to see transparency of what's going on.
I believe that it's not allowed,
Then, okay.
because it's one of those things that it has to be two-tiered. If it's not the CPC going to the town, then it's the conservation going to CPC for expenditures. Those are the two levels. If you just leave it to CPC to do it, that's not that's not the check and balance that we're looking for.
Okay, good answer.
Any further comments? Mr. Tui?
I personally don't have an issue with it in that the committee did answer my question in that I would trust them to do their job and monitor what it's being spent for.
Mr. Paulson? Motion? Any further comments? Seeing none? All those in favor, I have a feeling this one's always be close, so all those in favor signify by hand vote, please. All opposed? The nays have it. 1-6, I'm sorry, abstentions? 160. Right. Any votes against favorable action? 17.
I thank you for taking us out of turn. I appreciate it. Now I go to the Conservation Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Need to thank the town administrator.
I'd like to thank,
Thank you.
Mrs. Slavin.
Yes.
Mrs. Slavin, I'd like to thank you for this document.
Yes.
It's been a
Very nice.
very long time coming. We appreciate the information and the way you've laid it out.
It's getting smaller and smaller, so I think next time I might hide fiscal 3, 4, and 5 to allow us to read the rest of it. It's to the point it's down to an 85%, and I need magnifying glass.
But thank you for the information, I appreciate it.
Move to the town administrator's report.
Mr. Chairman, if we could move into the articles, I think that would give us,
Okay, we just have to go back to the...
keep the cadence on track, if you will, so we can get to article number 1.
Yes.
Thank you, David.
Did I miss a
So
conversation?
you should have, and for you to the members of the committee, especially, thank you for having us tonight. And you have in article number 1, a plethora of information and work papers that you should have before you. They're put on the standard capital planning forms that have developed. They have with them pro forma and information quotes that go that speak to each of the items that are listed as capital improvements. Let me just harken back, if I could, and remind the committee that back last December, as I presented the town administrative budget to this body and to the Board of Selectmen, I centered upon really 2 basic themes, if you will. One, still staying on public safety and trying to ensure that we have the proper equipment and items that would be needed. We have learned a little bit more about some of our equipment as it relates to particularly a generator. There was a need in the middle of Hurricane Irene. We were working very diligently to keep the police station, which was our emergency operations center, up and running, given that we had very serious electrical demand from the original generator that was built when the building was built. So that theme is still in place. We also are working to get a rebuilt ambulance. You may have been informed, Mr. Chairman, as I have tried to keep you informed, that at certain times of this past year, we have had some of our inspections of our ambulances cause concern to the town, not enabling us to keep our operations in full capacity. So the overview is still on that public safety theme as presented last year. And as the budget was approved at town meeting, the idea was to have the capital plan come forward in the fall through the capital planning process. I've been working with the capital planning committee. I want to thank Dave Trudell for his hard work and asking good questions. And I know I think we're supposed to have a meeting tomorrow, but I think it's coming up next Tuesday to provide that committee with any additional information that they might need. Just once again, just an overview, and I'm going to turn it over to Derek to get into some of the details. But we have looked at and worked with Superintendent Rabinovich for the purposes of getting into the business of busing. If we're going to be in the business of busing, I believe we need to have the equipment that will pass inspection. You should have a list in front of you that replaces 7 buses that are 1998 vintage, many of which have serious concerns, everything from transmissions to drivetrain issues. And so either we're in the business or we're not. It's like, I think Yogi Berra said, this is like deja vu all over again, Mr. Chairman. Because I went back and I checked the capital planning minutes for 2 years back in time. And the school district was looking for consideration back in February of 2009 for additional buses that they believe that they needed at that point in time. Derek has some additional pro forma and projections, as I know it came up at the last meeting. We can hand them out, basically letting you know that we intend to live within our debt service limit. We're going to be in the busing business. Let's make sure we have the safest buses in the fleet, and moving forward over time. We know this is not an easy question to solve, but the idea is that we work with the school department as we have, and to try to ensure that we have the proper replacement of buses going forward through the capital planning process. Derek, maybe if you want to just walk us through the worksheets, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor, you said that we should have a list of the buses, and I did not receive that. Everything else was distributed as received. I'd also question members, because I do receive stuff from the town administrator. In case you haven't noticed, I do forward it to you.
Yes, you do.
Okay. And we try to have copies available, and the same thing from the committees as well, if you can't print it. But I do try to get everything to you ahead of time. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do you want me to finish going through the explanation, or?
Yes, well, could you,
On item A, on
yes.
defibrillators, we're looking at body defibrillators, Derek, which I'll take over from you.
The 40 defibrillators, you can see this document, the one that we referenced, it should be the first one in your package. See the equipment costs, roughly 40 units at $2,100 each for $84,000. It's a light pack 1,000. The current defibrillators are 10 years old and are the light pack 500 model, which they've actually ceased manufacturing. And they ceased that over 3 years ago and will no longer be supporting the unit for parts and repairs as of January 2012. So you're talking about here, if you need to change any of these out, the parts are either going to be more expensive or unavailable.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just give the one example that I tried to underscore at the last meeting that we had a serious response necessary at town meeting. On town meeting floor, I see some of the tellers in the audience. We responded through our EMS division. The batteries were not charged, or one of the batteries was not charged. I pressed to get a battery charge, or to make the equipment available, if you will, in the same form to the police department, to the EMS, the same as we would have in the fire districts. And that's the idea here, Derek has indicated. And if I could just, the last line, Derek, is I've been telling, department needs 40, and just so you know where they're going to, 32 to cover marked and unmarked vehicles, 2 for the police station, 2 for the new ATV units, the beach units, 2 for undercover vehicles, and 2 spare units that we would have in storage.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Trudell?
Is there the one for the harbor master, is that being carried under the harbor master funds, or?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Harbor Master purchasing their own, this doesn't include the Harbor Master.
But it will be part of the purchase order at that price?
That would be, if you see on there, that's the best price from the mass bidding, that would be page 3.
Right, well, that was just my question, is that
Right.
the harbor master would benefit from that best price?
They would.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it's an excellent point. And they would be all the same height, I guess is probably the best way to say it. So that they, whoever got to the scene first, the emergency response would have the new life pack 1000.
Mr. Brunk?
Just a point, I know that the EMS and the fire department are compatible, they use the same. And generally, when there is a response, it's the police, it's the fire department and it's the EMS that, one is the fire department's working and then the EMS takes over. Really, is a police officer ever required to use one of these? From what I've been told. I just want to bring this up, and yeah, I'm for safety all about, but $84,000, I just think it could be better spent. I'd rather buy a school bus.
Mr. Trudell?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mrs. Brock. The Capital Planning Committee went through this, and we had originally thought that breaking the cost down to a lesser amount for years would kind of soften the impact. But to the documentation here, they're no longer going to support these things out past January of 2012. My understanding that the key feature to that is that the, whatever those things are, what's the technical name, Bonnie? Thingies?
Sticky pads.
Okay. That they attach are readily
Supposed to
interchangeable.
put those questions to the chairman. please.
Through the chair, please.
Sorry.
Oh,
That they're readily interchangeable. And from my perspective, I would rather err with $84,000 on the side of safety for the community, whether it's ever used or not, rather than to defer $84,000 because I can't afford it. When will I be able to afford a $2,100 device?
Through you.
Mr. Paulson?
Well, the question, I guess, from my standpoint is, how often have these defibrillators been used by the police over the past year, 2 years, 3 years?
Never.
That's what I'd like to know.
Can I ask you a
0,
question?
5 times, 15 times, 20 times?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Paulson, I don't think this is a quantitative issue. I think it's a qualitative life issue. Let me just be very clear. The people that were in this building and the town hall building, the night of Hurricane Irene, needed to have the equipment with them. We had a certain amount of response, emergency response, that was galvanized by our police chief, who was our emergency operations manager. Once we activate, Chairman Cruz steps back, town administrator steps back. Now to have all the equipment, and pardon me if I could inject a little bit of humor, the right thingies in the right places at the right time, at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, in the vehicles, in the fire trucks, in the ambulances, in my mind's eye, is a well investment, a great investment, a well-served town.
Mrs. Brown?
Yeah, I was next. You talked before me, after me. Just, again, I have asked many police officers, I've been on the receiving end waiting for them to come. And I'll tell you, God bless the EMS, God bless the fire department and the police department. They were all three were there. But I'll tell you that fire department, man, they were right there putting the things on, and the EMS was behind them, and the police were there too. I just think, I think it's, ideally, yes, I believe you're right. In a perfect world, I would agree. Let's do this. But we're not living in a perfect world, folks. I mean, this is not, when you're talking about the condition of our school buses, And to take $84,000 when we have two agencies that have perfectly great defibrillators, and I talked to 11 police officers, 11, just to ask them, have you ever used it? No. And I'm not talking about just new police officers. What the police department said to me was, we'd rather see it in the salaries, because they haven't got it raised in a while. But what I'm just telling you is, basically, they don't use them.
Mr. Paulson.
Yes, to the town administrator's suggestion that it's not a quantitative issue, it's a qualitative issue, I have a way to be absolute, that the town is absolutely protected. And that is that we hire enough policemen so that we can put them on every street corner throughout the town. Now that makes us all safe. But we don't have the money to do it, which gets back to the question I asked at the outset. How have these been used? How often are they used? I thought at the time that I asked the question that it was a legitimate question, and I guess I kind of apologize that I follow up with a question that is still the same question. How often have they been used?
I asked 11.
Mr. Trudell.
As it would just so happen that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I'll ask the chief that question because I have the opportunity to sit in front of the chief. I have your questions from the previous meeting. I'm working on the 5-year plan, and I will make that a point so that I'm sure his administrative assistant would be able to pull this information so that the town administrator would be able to answer that question. But I'll ask it tomorrow morning when I'm there, if that's all right with the town administrator.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, you know, and I'm not trying to administrate for qualitative or quantitative, but I'll say this. There are AEDs in our schools. I'm not sure how often they get used, but they're there in our hallways. There are AEDs in health, all the fitness centers. I'm not sure how often they get used. But when that incident happens, we know every second that goes by is of the utmost importance. So if Mr. Paulson, through you, Mr. Chairman, wants to roll the dice on that matter, he can. But where I sit, the important part is that we need to have the proper equipment. I was up on Charge Pond Road with an electrical line down with 30 cars trying to get through to their homes in the middle of a storm with the police officer, with the people that were trying to repair the electrical line and tear away some of the limbs from that electrical line. And you know what? I didn't see a fireman. I didn't see an EMS in other parts of the town. I was there with a police officer in their vehicle. Should have been, in my opinion, the most updated AED that we could get. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McDonald.
Let me change the direction, and I'm not sure if this is going to our representative from the capital committee or the town administrator. So the breakdown is $2,100 a unit. Do we have policies in place on what qualifies as capital and what qualifies as an expense?
To answer the question, Mr. Trudell.
To be technically correct, individually, these are expense items. And he could place them on the warrant article as an expense item because they're $2,100. I think in the issue of transparency, the town administrator has put this in front of the town, and that started back with Mr. Sanguinet. Mr. Sanguinet tried to bring to the town the issue of file cabinets, chairs, and he did break it down into expense and to capital items. But Mr. Sanguinet's point was that he wanted to tell the town that he was taking care of office furniture and equipment. He was taking care of expense items for the various departments, and he was taking care of capital planning. We approved, under Mr. Sanguinet, a list of expense items as a town warrant article, and we approved a set of capital. In this case, they're sort of combined, but it would qualify as an expense item.
Is it $2,500? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Is it $2,500 to exceed to be a capital?
25,000.
That's what I mean, 25,000 to be a capital item.
Correct.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Any further
also,
questions?
I'm sorry, to Mr. McDonald's point. In the world we live in, particularly with technology devices getting more complex and smaller and faster, the world is looking at it. capital in a little different perspective, and I just wanted to put that out there. Because if you spend money on a capital lease for a cruiser and you don't have the equipment in it, then I think we're falling back on a position to provide public safety in the highest possible way for the public. So, and as we retrofitted, to be quite honest, Larry, the cruisers with the most modern technologies we could, and it's the police officer's office, in my opinion, because that's where she spent the majority of their time. They ought to have at their disposal, once again, at an emergency, the capital device that gets them the highest level of public safety and emergency response. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
McDonald, follow-up?
Just as a response, I'm not questioning whether or not they're needed. That's certainly not my question. My question is, the $2,100 a unit, how long are these gonna last? And it's just difficult for me to see that as capital item, because that's like saying you're going to go out and do your entire office in personal computers or desktop units, and they're obviously, some of them are cheaper, some are more expensive, but you're gonna do the entire part, and you're gonna capitalize that whole thing, and that just doesn't happen because of the life that it's going to be used for. It's just not something that's proven. I'm not struggling with the idea of what the defibrillators are going to do. What I'm struggling with is this really a capital item? And if one goes out and we replace it, you have this capital issue problem. If you have to replace that unit and it's out of warranty or whatever reason, now you got a $2,100 one. Now you're going to have to expense that one because it's not part of the complete total over here.
Mr. Chairman, let's use the experience that we have, and in the explanation, I just want to point out, illustrate to the members, okay? We got 10 years of life cycle out of the previous AEDs, probably the first generation of defibrillators that were available to us. So that 10-year cycle, where I come from, that tells me that this is a capital expense and should be looked at maybe on a more regular basis to be replaced, because like I said, the battery pack, person's down on the floor at town meeting, what do you do? And the next...
Who it is.
I'm sorry.
Depends how they're voting.
Well,
Sorry, I just carried away.
but the idea here is that we have historical data, and look at this. This tells us that we've got 10 years of equipment cycle out of... Maybe that, how many town meetings is that? That's probably 20 town meetings. So the idea here is that it shows me, once again, the administrator for the town, that we have life cycle, we can look at improving it. People struggle with this all the time, accountants all the time, and does equipment or other software, routers and servers, are they capital expenses, or do you replace them on?
I would, no, understand that. This is one of the reasons why we also requested an opportunity for a workshop with Bowers and Sullivan. In business, this is very simple, right? There are tax laws, and the tax laws say 2,100 doesn't qualify. Okay, and the government tells us what's capital and what's not capital. All right, and unless it was a project it was an initial project, right, a first time, okay, and at that point there are reasons where you can do that. However, that doesn't mean the first time for this vendor, it means the first time they go in, and after that, everything is replacement and subject to the tax laws of the Internal Revenue Service. Mr. Trudell?
For the edification of the committee, some years ago, we started working with the fire department and the EMS regards communications equipment. Actually, the fire department had an excellent plan. It was in place in Onset and in Wareham. And the people that were not in tune with it was the town of Wareham. And in the process, we ended up getting some repeaters and some radios, so everybody is on the same sheet of music. But in that process and discussions, one of the things that the EMS brought out to the capital planning was that the defibrillators had a life, and that the police department and the fire department and the EMS, they could only interface with the EMS and the fire department, and our stuff was on the town side bad. I think when I can speak for the capital planning chair who was here, that our sensing was that as a community, not only in communications, But in any other area where there's common areas, we've got to reach out to the fire department and the EMS so that we're all on the same sheet of music, whether it's communications or these defibrillators. We cannot afford to find that the town is falling farther and farther behind while the fire department is moving forward and we're not. That does not make a lot of sense for us. And this will put us all on the same sheet of music, and I think that's an awful critical item, is that we're all on the same sheet of music.
Mrs. Sprung?
I'd like to move this, and get on with it.
Continue the
Sorry.
discussion, another option, perhaps.
Mr. Chairman,
Not quite yet. Mr. Gray?
I have a question of procedure. Do we vote on this article all as one unit, all, or every item in one vote, or do we vote on it individually?
We can vote on it, we can discuss how we'll vote on it at a later time. This can be split on the town meeting floor. We could split it, and I would think we can handle it as one article, and our explanation, our recommendation should be by A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so just for the paper amount of printing, we could handle it that
Yes.
way. However, when it goes to the town meeting floor, we could also recommend that it be split. One of the things that I'm also seeing here, as we've said before, 3 of these items basically are not by the town's definition capital items. All right, although mobile items, according to the town charter, again, all have to go for approval by the town meeting. The first 3 items, in fact, are expense items and probably should be presented to the town as such. They're not capital. That's not a positive or a negative towards the items. It's just saying that they truly are not capital, and I don't know if it serves any purpose to identify them that way. It will not change how they're paid for. It will not change the source of the funds. But it does clearly identify what's expense and what's capital. And it is very specific in the charter, all right, that it must meet, the 25, was it 25,000? Well, the generator would make it. And we could talk about the parking later. Okay, Dominic?
Just want to, I got here late, I apologize. Just want to put my 2 cents in here. We spend money on many, many things in this town, and a lot of it you can justify, and a lot of it you can't justify. You're talking about spending money that 1 unit saves 1 life. I'm sorry, guys. You're talking about people's lives, okay? When we spend money on, please, this is people's lives, I'm sorry. I can't see where it's something, it saves 1 person's life. It's $84,000 worth it. Put a price on a life. That's just my 2 cents.
Paulson?
If I might, to my colleague, I understand that.
No, okay.
And it has it resonates with me, certainly at my age. But we don't seem to establish priorities in this town. You yourself just said, and I will quote you, saying that we spend money on things that we shouldn't spend money on.
Right.
And that is the problem. It really is. We have to prioritize.
Point taken, Mr. Gray?
Agreed.
I thought you had something to say. Do you have a new point, Mr. McDonald? or-
I think so.
All right,
If I don't, you can
I'll gavel
Yeah,
you.
and this is, I'm struggling with this article in general, okay? I see the need, I really do. I see the need for all this, and it's kind of bothering me a little bit because we're talking about capital items, and one of my problems is we're 4 months into 2012. I don't know if anybody else here has seen anything, but I haven't seen any complete financial information. And I guess it goes back to 2010. I wasn't here, so I don't know. But I haven't seen any complete financial information. And we're facing a $919,000 issue that was brought out in the audit. And we don't have any answer for that. We really don't know what our free cash is. And I understand Mr. Foster, and I thank him for coming, because our debt is in good shape, our debt service is in place, but now we're gonna incur additional debt, and I don't know what our debt service limit is, but we don't have any numbers. And I'm looking at this stuff and I'm saying to myself, you know, we need this stuff, but at the same time, I don't have any idea where we stand from a financial standpoint. I find it hard to make a decision for the future of this town when I know we borrowed or we took $1.4 million from the healthcare trust last year to cover our operating expenses. That means this year, if we keep everything the same, we're $1.4 million behind the ball already. And we're now looking at, and it's not a lot, but it's still capital that we may need for something else. I also understand, and this is just, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Trudell, is we have $98 million worth of capital needs over the next 5 years. That's a significant number. I just have a hard time, and believe me, I'm a parent. My daughter rides the bus. The last thing I want is lousy buses out there for my daughter. But we haven't even addressed the bigger problem, which is we're going to get 7 buses, but we really don't know where we're going with the buses.
You're starting to stray.
Huh?
You're starting to stray.
Okay, I'm not trying to stray. I
Your
think
point
we
is
need
well taken.
financial information. I'd like to see some complete numbers of where we stand before we make critical decisions like capital.
Okay.
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman?
Trudell?
Mr. Chair, he's making a presentation on the various items in here. We haven't really gotten into the meat of the specific article, nor has capital planning had a chance to go through that article. I'd like to continue with his explanations because I'd like to be able to move on to other articles tonight when we get down to warrant articles. If we just keep beating this horse to death, then why don't we all go on break and come back about 3 in the morning? Because we're just gonna beat it forever.
Your point well taken.
I just have one comment, and you did bring it to light here. If we don't know what we have, why are we spending?
Okay. Mr. Gregg?
Are we going to vote on this article tonight? I would hope not. So we're just listening to explanations at this point.
We'll address it at the end of the article, what we're going to do tonight. Okay?
Mr.
And
Chairman,
we'll address it.
if I
Mr.
could
Andrews?
please, because I think we have strayed, I just want to be clear for the record,
Mhm.
where I stand right now, whatever information comes out of the completion of the fiscal 2010, 2011 audit, we're very close to setting up a meeting with the Board of Selectmen in this body to get that information to you. The auditors are on site. These are capital authorizations. Let me just be clear, this might set the tone for the upcoming meeting with the auditors, which they're happy to do, but we're just in that high time period, and I think it's a perfect example, Mr. McDonald, of mixing operating items with capital items. These are capital authorizations. Let me just go back a minute, because when we did have an issue in the town accountant's office, I helped, at the advice of the auditors in my body, the Board of Selectmen, items that pertain to capital outlay, because we wanted to be absolutely certain that the authorizations would not put us in a difficult position. These items are authorizations. If for some reason that we can shorten or we need to hold them or put them, we're asking the body, the town meeting, to give us the authorization to stay on that beam that I presented, that passed that town meeting in the springtime. Here are the public safety needs that we have. You can call them expense items, you can call them capital items, you can call them whatever you want. They lessen our liability, they provide the people on the front lines that are doing the work with the tools to do their jobs. That's the bottom line. It doesn't touch anything that's in the 10 audit or the 11 audit. Those years have passed us. This is going into the future. They fit under the cap that has been talked about with respect to the meals tax and the use of the meals tax. If you look at it, there's a pretty decent split. So when you get to article number 2, you may want to think about stuff, because where I sit, and I said this last night before my Board of Selectmen, that we have made the split. And we have used our cerebral understanding of where we are to get some capital to the school department in the form of buses, and some capital to other parts of town governance. And that's what the proposal is. I stand by it, and we have given you, I hate to keep using the word, mounds and plethora of information about what these are and why they're needed. So on fascia, take your votes any way you want. The idea is that move forward with the authorization. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to put all this into the into Mr. Foster's notebook on day one, Mr. McDonald. And I do respect your position, point, but the position of the town is, let's get these authorizations so we can work with, in the fiscal year, to get these needed items. That's where I sit, and that's where I'm coming from.
And I fully understand your position. However, I have to say, I think the committee's position has merit as well. You're asking for a capital program, you're asking for expenditures to be made, yet for the last 14 months, I understand 2010 and 2011 are history, but we have no documents supporting that history, and you're asking us to make judgments with zero information. Unheard of outside of municipalities. In business, they would laugh at me. I understand your problems. You have to understand our problems as well. The evening of the town meeting, the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee will have to sit before the citizens of this town who will ask, can we afford to make these payments to the debt? Can we afford to purchase these items? We do not, at this point, the members have all stated the same. They are not comfortable with making a recommendation without having seen at least the financial situation of the last 15 months, the year 2011 and the last 3 months. That does not require audited statements. It does for free cash, I understand that. But we do need to know what are the expenditures, what are the revenues. We don't know it.
I'm saying to you, and the treasurer collector was here, 2 meetings ago, it fits into our debt service as we project out what we have for under the meals tax coming in for the fiscal year going forward. And if
I'll stop you right there. How much meal tax have you collected, or how much are you projected to collect from the Department of Revenue as of today?
What we're projected to collect for the year is exactly.
Not their estimate, what they have notified you you will be receiving as payment.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
They didn't start collection until in August. That we've gone over, it's a 10-month collection. That's why it was lowered off of their estimates. We do not have that. We have exactly what their estimates were, which was lowered by $80,000 to go to $320,000.
We have their estimates. Do we have any information from them to demonstrate to us that their estimates are really relative to the current economy, right, and the business that has occurred in the town since it was was instituted? And I understand we did not institute it until August 1st.
They wouldn't start collections until.
We didn't start collections until August 1st. So when would we receive the first payment?
You would have that at the end of September.
Mr. Chairman, we did provide that information through you, if I could, at town meeting, not the towns, and this happens across the Commonwealth, anybody that adopts the meals tax, not the town's projections, these aren't our projections. They're off the Department of Revenue's website.
I fully understand that. I also understand that they have been significantly wrong in a number of towns.
Okay, let me just finish.
We're talking 20, 30, 40%.
The requirement that they have, and I don't want to get too far afield here because I think Mr. Trudell hit it on the point, we'll be here till whatever time.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what we know about it, that we did take the 10/12s, and what we did as a requirement, go out and check and make sure that every business that we had listed in the meals collection world was alive and kicking. So when we get that information, we'll provide it to you. September should be coming in. We're in touch with the Department of Revenue on this to be absolutely critically clear so that we don't overestimate what we have for meals tax. Okay, and so that being said, we'll get that information to you. And I'd like to stay on the capital side of things, Mr. Chairman, because I think we've kind of swayed over onto the operating side, and I'm happy to get into a discussion about that at the appropriate time. But I think to Mr. Trudell's point, let's describe them. You folks can vote any way you want, and obviously that's your prerogative. I would appreciate a positive review of the documentation that we provided, because Mr. Sullivan and others have worked very hard to pull this information together for you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, Mr. Trudell was first. I'm sorry.
I had two things. One, we got onto the meal tax, and meal tax represents $300,000 for the year. our original point was, we haven't seen adequate financial statements for the previous year and the current year. And I don't want to go away from that point. But with your permission, Mr. Chair, I do have a question on the bus documentation that was handed to us.
Well, why don't we let him continue on until it
Okay.
gets to that point, if you may.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can we move on to item B?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, item B, you have a worksheet in front of you, it's $40,000. Mr. Sullivan?
For the replacement of the generator at the police station during the tropical storm, to be blunt, it failed. It turned out to be inadequate for the needs. And I know we'd spoken about, is there another format or a type of generator you can plug in, plug out? The current one uses natural gas, and that's what they'd like to replace it with, is the same one. I think that, I don't believe that'd be one that we could bring around to other facilities. There's also, it wasn't just the generator, their electricals a little bit old for the level. I don't think I'm telling anybody anything new, but you'll also see there's going to be some upgrades in these South Shore generator service. And that would also help with the implementation of the virtual system going in there. Because, you know, if we can't keep the police station running during emergency time, it's probably one of the worst situations I can think of.
Mr. Paulson?
Generators. How many generators do we have in town? And another question, how old are most of them?
Chairman?
I'm just thinking ahead here that we might have to be replacing.
Again, we are straying from the immediate subject unless you're talking about replacing one with another.
I'm asking a question about how many generators do we have.
Answer the question.
Chairman, we have a generator in this building that was recently replaced, and through the capital planning process. We have a generator in town hall, and I'm not certain of the school district buildings, but the police station generator, I believe is vintage, came with the building. We kept adding equipment to the system. As Mr. Sullivan stated, it fails, it causes additional, we need to upgrade the electrical. And by the way, this is in the building. It's not like you just pick this up like a suitcase and walk around with it. It's in the building. So truly, in my mind's eye, from my perspective, for whatever it's worth, a capital item. So that's the role of generators that I know.
Those are the only ones that you know, this building, town hall, and perhaps in the school department,
In
nothing,
the middle school and high school.
and nothing at EMS. I'm just curious, that's all. If that's it, that's fine.
Small number.
Onset Fire has a big one.
Any other questions? This item?
Onset Fire has a big generator.
Next item? Shall we move on to the vehicles?
Parking program?
Or the parking program, I'm sorry. Parking program?
And once again, for the record, this is not a new item. We see it in the springtime, asking for consideration. This, and you have all of the backup material that,
It was very good, too. Very, very good
you can
presentation.
see.
Excellent.
So it's kind of, it speaks for itself, it's pretty visual. You go, you park your car, you pull out a ticket, takes the amount of time that you think it's going to be there. It's pretty straightforward. For the edification of the committee, you know, just a quick update. Derek informed me, you know, we brought in 37,000 and change just off the onset pier this past summer. This is projected to bring in 4 times that amount, $164,879. So, you know, and by the way, it doesn't include a surveillance that I'm happy to show you, that engineering drawing that we got done on C.W. Bishop. It does not. We're holding out some spaces for the businesses because we know we have to be proactive in talking with them about where do they park, how do they get to and from, you know, what type of activity. So we've been informed that through research of the chief and his lieutenant, John Walsack, that program works when you work closely with businesses so that people aren't threatened by it. We're really trying to get to, I've said this from meeting to meeting. Person that shows up, you know, with the big cooler and the beach blanket and towel, and is smiling all the way down from CW Bishop Lot, goes onto the beach, has a great day, doesn't spend a dime in one of our businesses, and heads back home at the end of the day. So I think this is an idea of time that has come in time. You can see clearly the numbers and the pro formas are pretty straightforward. But when you can realize in 4 times the revenue for the investment that you're making, it's going to pay for itself within a short period of time.
Very good.
Thank you.
Does not include the surveying work. Do you have any idea what the surveying work is gonna cost? Look, well, let me back this up. The last meeting we had, surveying work was supposed to cost roughly $70,000. That's the figure I remember. And I may be incorrect in A, the amount, and B, what it was gonna be, what it was gonna be used for. But it was gonna be a big number.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Paulson, I thought the amount that was presented in the spring was $84,000.
For the
No, I'm at the last meeting here with the, not in the spring, but the last meeting we had.
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I wasn't clear to the member. We conducted the survey work because what we would like to do is expand the parking where people aren't picnicking up at CW Bishop. So the idea is to expand out the lot, and we'll get that additional information sheet. I don't believe that, I believe it's, I'll get the number to you, but it wasn't $84,000. The municipal maintenance director did it, conducted it.
I'm not saying that everything hasn't flown smoothly already, but they're gonna come to a point where they're gonna say, enough vehicles is enough. The town needs other things more than all the vehicles that we have. I just believe that he's beaten that vehicle horse and he's gotten everything he's asked, and to ask for one more at this time and the condition of the town, I think it's gonna be a tough pill to swallow. And the other thing is, if this form's gonna go to the, into the meeting where people can actually read this over and they're gonna look at things, they're gonna start flipping down this page and they're gonna say, nice, flip up armrest, $105. Cup holders, $40. This is gonna be tough to swallow, guys, that's my opinion.
You didn't go down far enough.
Yeah, you did go
Well, there's
down.
no other special.
If we
I
were,
was having a trouble trying to share with you over the throw ring with rope for $50.
was there an intention to distribute this at town meeting, or is this merely for our information as to what was put into the quote?
For your information.
Okay,
All
don't
right.
send it
Will
to,
some of these items come with the vehicle automatically as part of the vehicle's package, or were they specifically requested by us? Or we don't know at this point?
I don't know, but I would imagine when I go to the car dealership, they tell you.
I know, that's why I asked.
So I don't think this is.
Mr.
You
Chairman,
may not be able to get the vehicle without the item, as senseless as it seems to us.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I
Yes.
think it's important, to Dominic's point for you. We will put together, as we have in previous town meetings, a town meeting package for the full reading of everybody that's there. We'll include all of the information, but to the point about the cup holder, let's just be clear, you may not have an option for it. So it's built into the console, Don. You can take a chainsaw and cut it out and hand it back to the dealer.
That's what we were
No, I
saying.
understand,
We were
but I was just
that
saying-
it might automatically come with the
Yeah,
vehicle.
I'm just, once again, and we're using state certified, we're trying to give you as much information as you could possibly need, Mr. Chairman.
I understand, you know, the people are gonna thank you town hall, that's all I'm saying. you know.
I got you,
All
I
right, okay.
understand, I understand.
Any more comments on the four-wheel drive vehicle?
Mr.
It's
Chairman,
killing Bonnie, go ahead.
sitting by the window here, I do notice Dominic's car is towed away.
Mrs. Katui, you obviously have something to say. Would you,
You know,
I think it's the Plymouth District Court too, it's not the way in Mr. Chairman.
I will say that there obviously is a need, because my son said that one of these vehicles was on a flatbed the other day going down the road. So maybe in that, if there was some backup information on what this four vehicles cost us in maintenance recently, that's a selling point for getting people to buy it. But I will tell you that it was on a flatbed the other day.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Trudell?
to Mr. Chairman, but it was still moving. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Can we move on to the EMS ambulance rebuild, please?
Mr. Chairman, let me just frame this for you, and once again, I stated this for the record, if I could, Kelly, in the past, I want to say it again. We have been very light in our work on replacement and/or rehab of our ambulances. We're in the ambulance business. I intend to be in the ambulance business as long as I'm town administrator. I know there's been some chat or talk about jettisoning off the ambulance division. Just for the record, it is a great resource for us, very profitable. But people know what they get for what they're paying for. And even though they might be a little bit unconscious or something's up, okay, they gotta go. What we have now is a very scary situation as it relates to mutual aid from Marion and other districts that have had to come in. The state inspection process is grueling, to say the least. In some cases, a door gasket and/or we didn't get cool 101.9 because the radio was broke, and we had to take the ambulance out of service. So we looked at this, and people know my feelings, and we're working on other planes and other levels to get us some level of assistance. But working with Dave Evans, Derek, I'll turn it over to you. We simply should be in this business because we have not rebuilt or gotten a new ambulance in service in at least 7 to 8 years, from what I can gather. And so this is $150,000, Derek, for the rebuild of a unit that
Basically a complete rebuild and overhaul of it and bringing everything in there brand new. There's, it's basically, it's like gutting a house, if I can put it anyway.
Dave Evans is, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Dave Evans has provided us with that process by which that would happen, where the actual box gets pulled off and gets reworked. And once again, it's a very serious matter, and the state inspectors have been in, as I have indicated. I'll leave you with that.
Mr. Gray?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I believe you mentioned that this was a very profitable enterprise, obviously, aside from the obvious need for ambulances. But what did you mean by a profitable business, and do we have any figures on it?
We will get you those, Sam, Mr. Chairman. The outlay of services and cost for personnel and equipment and operations bring us, I believe, and I don't want to get off track here, at least $250,000 to $300,000 positive cash flow for the town. And we'll get you some more information on that. It is, and when I say also profitable, let me just be also clear. I think it's important because in some other communities where you do not operate the service itself, you don't get the feel for being in the business. You get a hired hand in some cases with ambulance services that I think the private sector is not operating in the public sector. So I meant that as well as profitable because I believe that we have the best possible front line of medical services with the EMS, the fire department, and the police department. So, and we'll get you some. That information, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it was in some of the grids that we provided in the budget process, but we'll get you that information.
Thank you.
Mr. Paulson?
I read, and I thought I'd sent something to you on this, but I don't recall, but I do remember what I read. The Medicare reimbursement is changing, and it's changing in a way that is going to be adverse to our profitability. So I'd like to know from the town administrator just exactly what the new formula looks like and how it's going to affect us.
Mr. Chairman, pardon me, but, you know, I don't have that information, and you said you read something in the newspaper?
About a month ago.
Okay, well, why don't you provide to us, because I'm not able to respond to your question directly, because I don't have that newspaper article in front of me.
To it.
Again,
I'm sorry.
just if I might pursue that just a moment. If we're going to look at the Sam's question about getting the figures, I would take it as perhaps as a suggestion, I think it is a suggestion, that just go online, Google it, Medicare and ambulance, and see if there's some change in the formula. Because it's probably logical, given the federal government's difficulties with funding, that they are in fact not only changing the formula, they're changing it in a way that would be adverse to our economic.
I think that's a reasonable suggestion. Mr. McDonald, I'm sorry, Mr. McDonald hasn't said anything in a while, let's give him an opportunity.
This is a rebuild. Sorry, question
Yes,
through
it's
you. This is a rebuild. So what would be the cost of a new ambulance versus the cost of a rebuild?
What was it, 214?
It's around 214,000. We also, I know that the capital planning committee had an idea that the rebuild might actually be less. What this is based off is the town of Brewster just did a rebuild like this, which is a similar model. And they've had from the EMS called over to there, and that was roughly the amount.
I should ask my second question. Can I finish up on this? So what is the life of an ambulance? So, I mean, again, if we're talking 2-something versus 150, what is that life of that ambulance going to give us? The difference between the two, it may be worth it in the end.
All right, to answer the question, I'm going to ask Mr. Trudell, because the capital planning has done extensive,
Well, there you
had
go.
extensive
I direct the
discussions.
question to Mr. Trudell.
Luckily, we have Mr. Kluber with us on the capital planning, who is a retired fire chief from Warren. And he was the one that first suggested to us that rebuilds were available. And the way he explained it was, you have a new ambulance, and after about 4 years, it's time to rebuild it. You can rebuild them once, not twice. And when they rebuild it, they drive it in, they lift the box, they throw everything else away. The cab, the transmission, the frame, it's all gone. They drive a new cab, new engine, new tranny, new frame. You take the box, they strip the box, they put in new lighting, they put in everything that brings it up to current standards, strap the box back on, deliver your ambulance. So you get a new one, you get one rebuild. So somewhere around 8 to 10 years, you look about
That would
finished your ambulance off. That's providing, of course, that you're rebuilding it, not consuming the positive cash flow and not doing those things, because obviously.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could, we're relying on Dave Evans also to, who has worked extensively with capital planning with the administration, to say, to Mr. McDonald's point, this is a possibility for a rebuild, because otherwise, you're absolutely correct, just let the $64,000 more and get something moving.
Chair would have a question. The 250,000 quote-unquote profitability number, all right, is any portion of that set aside for replacement, or is that basically just coming into the general fund?
It's coming into the general fund.
So then when we need a new vehicle, how is that paid for? Is it paid for out of the EMS revolving, or does it go against the debt service of the town?
It goes against the debt service of the town. I think.
Okay, so it's really, the 250 is not really a total profit number, because there's no depreciation or debt service charged to it.
No, and I think, once again, if I could, you talked about this
Right.
ground rules, Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
I was asked a question, I gave the most reasonable answer that I could give, and I will get Mr. Gray the information. But let's be absolutely clear, whether it comes from the general fund through the debt service or through some other form, the method of payment is still the same, you still have to pay it.
I understand that. I just want people to think that, that yes, the vehicle's being paid entirely for, and they're making it full 250.
Sure.
If it was in a business, we would say the 250 would be less some years' usage of that vehicle. And it's critically important.
Absolutely critically important. If I could
Okay.
ask you through Mr. Chairman to Mr. Trudell, We probably should have been in the reinvestment business a lot sooner than this, because we weren't thinking about rebuilds or new ambulances up until the time when the state inspectors show up and say, you gotta take this one off the road. And once again, it is a very grueling process. The ones that have the dual gaskets and other, minor modifications that have to get done, we can get those things fixed.
Correct.
But you have some other issues with the ambulances that go back to the late 1990s.
That's a very good explanation. I just want to make sure the public understands that it's not all profit, all right, that there are responsibilities down the road for new vehicles, et cetera, that nothing's being set aside for at this time. Okay, any more comments on the ambulances?
No.
Shall we go to the buses? Mrs. Brunk?
I have a question, and again, you've put it out really well, but we know that we need more than, how many buses? You're looking for 7 buses. We know that year 2, that we're gonna be looking for another 7 buses. So I think we should include, I'm just trying to be very clear. In year 2, we're gonna be paying $182,000, because we're gonna be looking for another 7. And then year 3, they're gonna be looking for another 7, and they're gonna be buying out for $350. It's gonna cost us $623,000 from year 3 on, because it's gonna be a continuing of making them safe and keeping them safe. And I just want the public to know that.
Mr. Chairman, we kind of anticipated that question. That's why you're going to get this worksheet before you.
Oh, okay.
It's about debt service and cap, we'll call it cap, on the state's debt service on the town's debt service as it relates to state finance laws and the prescriptions that we follow. We work very hard with capital planning and the finance committee and the board of selectmen to understand how do you solve this problem. It's an issue of making a step into the pool. You can't get to swim until you get into the pool. So, my opinion, it's time to get into the pool. And I said this at the last meeting, maybe a few less Christmas cards this year, but so be it. We know we can fit this into the debt service because we're working closely with the treasurer collector. And it's based off of the analysis that we got from the school department and their prospective transportation coordinator in bidding and getting information on a yearly basis. And we know we're going to hit some tough years, but we're going to be taking other things off the debt service list, like the backhoe we just purchased, like the street sweeper we just purchased, like the communication system for the police department. So as that cycle of debt gets paid down, we're going to increase our cap. And what Derek did was a very simple, maybe you want to walk through it, simple analysis to show you that we are concerned about it, but we believe we can fit this into our forward planning. And he put a very simple program together, but if you want to go through it, please.
Yeah, simply the genesis of this was I was having a similar question. I wanted to see it with my own eyes, what I'd really be looking at. So I created 4 phases, went over 7 years. Obviously, you can extend it out for forever. We've got year 1, the 91,000. Then year 2 is going to show the 91,000. Then the next phase 2 in there, which I increased because I anticipate costs going up. That's the rule. And then you'll go on to year 3, which is when the next phase kicks in, where you'll see that also that the next phase is a 3% increase as well, and going through there. So you see, you do have that. You have the peak, and then the cascade down, and then you go on further there. Each one, year 4, you'll see a $350,000 buyout. Year 5, you have a $360,000 buyout. Year 6, 371. Year 7, 382. Now we all know that's not the end after the years. You'll see something underneath, I'm sure, that will either pique your interest or horrify you. I don't know. It's what I put together. It's just kind of a comparison on that. If we had the DOR local meals option, lowered that 5% off of their estimates. And so what if we, let's say the buses were just funded with that. Not a suggestion, but that's just some sort of comparison to myself. and you'll see how it goes on there. The first year, the 291,000, that would essentially go to free cash, since you can't just earmark it for that. See, then following year, we'd have about 488,000 going over towards free cash. The third year, 589,000, and then that's when the big hits get in, when you have a lot of you have the most leases on there, plus the buyout. So you'll see the revenue starts going down, but again, it would cascade up again. So it's a great way to look at some of the funding mechanisms for it. And I didn't put more information on here, because really, I had created it for myself, but I was hoping this would help people as to how we were seeing it.
Before I take any comments, the math. I don't understand it. On the school bus list annual cost breakdown, 382 less 184 is not 488, and the negative signs, the deficit signs are missing it from year 16 out.
That's a great question, because it's, again, I put it for myself. So if you see the 382,000, then the next year you would be bringing the 291 over plus the 382, 248. When you subtracted the 184, 730 from there, which would give you a number of 488. So you see that when I'm saying the 291, you put that towards the free cash essentially?
You're trying to look at a cumulative flow?
Yes.
Okay. Not too many people are going to recognize cumulative flows.
Jim, we're trying to get outside the box here, but you know.
No, well, it's not just that. It doesn't even say cumulative flow. So, all right. The chair, in light of that, I'm going to recognize Mrs. Katui first.
Yeah, the least numbers expert. I like this. Matter of fact, I had asked for something like this at our last meeting. My only question or my only comment, and you can answer this or you can refuse to answer, and I don't really care, but first off, this plan was supposed to take into effect when, I don't know how many years ago it was, that town of Wareham went into the busing business in the first place. This plan was is what they were supposed to do, that never got done, all right? The fact that we want to suddenly do it now and go forward and replace these buses is really nice, but my question is, do we really want to, okay? If I would like the voters to understand that if this is the town's plan to solve our busing problem, then this is the town's plan. But if it's only a quick fix, and I asked this last week at the meeting, if this first 7 buses was a quick fix, and then we're going to look at other options, okay? And the town administrator wasn't here to answer that question. So I suppose that is really my question. Is this a quick fix and we're going to look at other options? Or are we going to start with this year as our plan and move forward, and this is the plan we're going to be in?
To answer the question?
Mr. Chairman, this is not an easy one to solve, we all know that. The question comes is, are we in the busing business or not? And the way I see it, because we talked about some form of privatization, we try to do reverse auction, lo and behold, the general public, we get one bill. So the busing world kind of knows what's happening before we even put our foot into the pool. And I'm simply not going to sit back, and it's not a one-time hit, a one-time wonder, or whatever that program is on Sunday nights that they have, one-hit wonders. You can't be in the business. We could try some other things down the line in terms of, overall privatization of some of the maintenance and some of the service. And other people have done a lot more work at this than I. But I'm willing to take the step forward and say that either we're in the busing business to get our children safely transported to and from. We face a number of issues, as we all know, in this world, and this is a key one. And probably should have been, because I went back and, not to pick on capital planning, this has been talked about until pretty much everybody's blue in the face, okay, including myself. So we are in the busing business. And what Derek and I were trying to do is say, okay, we have this new revenue source. Great minds around this table have already said to me, let's split the money 50-50 in Article 2. I don't think that's the way to go. I think we should be sitting and talking and deliberating about capital each year. And as we get off of the public safety thing, with regards to the cruises, and by the way, that has been sustained, and look at the result, okay? We are making great strides. So as we pull that back, we try to look at, with John Foster, treasurer collector, how do you get into the next phase of this if you're gonna be in the busing world with this? And it doesn't mean that we can't do reverse auctions to say to the world that's out there, maybe you can run this better than us, take our buses, you run it, we'll give you a one-time lump sum, and you can do it. And it is the town's responsibility because it comes out of the town's coffers to pay for this, not out of the school department's budget. That's the other misnomer that's out there. It's the town's responsibility. The town administrator is putting this forth. I'm looking for your help to get this at least, discussed fully. We are using the Braintree model to some extent. We're looking at a hybrid of bidding, talking with the superintendent about getting it in a sustained way going forward, so that the numbers that we have are as real as another school district doing this. And the last point I'd like to make is that I'm happy to be here at every meeting, but I told you through my ground rules, and I just want to straighten this out with record. We're not going to come to every meeting. I've already said that to the body. So if you want me to be here, I'm happy to be here and answer questions, or if you want to send them through the chair, I'll answer them. But this has simply come to a head, in my humble opinion. We've got to do something about it. Is the number 7? I don't know, maybe it's 5. But the idea is at least we've got something out there as an authorization to go into the busing fleet. And by the way, the lead time I was astonished by, and I'm going to let Dave, the capital planning chairman answer this. You got the school year opening up, and you got to be able to get the orders in, and you got to get the buses fitted to come to be ready for opening the school. So we're really looking at getting these buses into the system by sometime late spring or next fall at this point. And that's 1 year after we've all heard about the great need for the buses and some of the failures. And I know Selectman Snyder, I just want to say this real quick, had asked for, and through the capital planning committee, the records for repair, just like we did with the ambulance. What are we repairing, and is it something that can be repaired? Some of the older buses, to my astonishment, you're better off keeping them on the road than some of the newer buses. And I don't know if that's pertaining to routes in different places, or as Derek had said earlier, we're in a mode of trying to catch up quickly. But like the cruises, you just can't catch up and say, okay, yeah, we did 8, we're all done. It doesn't work that way. We've got 30 plus on the streets as we speak. So we've, in my opinion, got to start someplace. This is a start. I'm very willing to listen to the body to tell me if it's 7 or it's lower or higher, whatever your thoughts might be on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Paulson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And actually, to 2 points that the town administrator made. First of all, it's 7 buses, probably not going to 5, more likely to be going to 35. I think that's the number that I've heard bandied around. And maybe it's not 35, maybe it's 30, maybe it's 28. But it's going to be considerably more than 7. Therefore, and I'll get to my second point in a moment, the spreadsheet that we have here, which I applaud in terms of its intent, should probably be carried out further, so that we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 buses. We go from $2 million to $4 million, which gets to my next point, and the issue of older buses being on the roads that are serviced. On this, the public doesn't see, and this document that was given to us, it says the maintenance cost savings is rigorously determined. But then it goes on to say, units above, the 7 that we want to replace, cost $2,100 per vehicle, which adds up to $14,000 per year, to repair them. In other words, keep them on the road. Now, maybe 14,000 isn't adequate. Maybe it should be 20,000. But the point I would like to make is that we should be examining, perhaps, a very rigorous preventive maintenance program to keep the older buses on the road. To some extent, a little bit like the conversation we had on the ambulance, where you take certain parts and pieces and you just replace them because you know they're going to fail. The numbers are there.
Yes, please, let Mr. Trudell from Capital Planning, our Capital Planning member, answer that question.
To respond to that, the original number that we heard was 32 buses. And then that was cut down to, I believe, 21 or 22 urgent need replacements. The chair of capital planning can correct me if I'm off the track. However, to your point, when you get to year 7 and the number drops to 382,454, you still have not yet replaced the 32 buses. Plus, now the year 1 bus is 6 years old. When you get to year 8, that year 1 bus now is 8 years old. We're being told that their life on these is basically at the lowest cost of maintenance is at 5 to 7. So, to your point, some of these buses, in addition to the ones that we're going to have to replace, are going to be in those out years. What the number is going to be brutally hard to predict, because nothing says that 14 of them won't be out of action by the end of this year. So he's working with some tough numbers, but to your point, the out years of 8 and 9 should be supported by some suppositions that tell us where the numbers are going, because they're going to start going back up again. Because now your buses are, so there's that aspect of it when you talk about out years.
Good point.
Mr. Gregg?
2 points, if one is a question really, through you, Mr. Chairman. I've heard numbers that have gone from 28 to 40 on buses. I'd like to know how many buses we have now.
I have that and I can't remember.
To answer that question?
Mr. Chair, I thought I sent you an Excel spreadsheet on that.
I did have it there then, and I don't, it's.
You did,
Well,
but I
that's-
don't have it right with me.
well, I don't have it right with you either.
We don't have it at our fingertips.
But my point is, you know, we're talking this and I've heard, you know, well, I don't know what the correct numbers are, but they're somewhere around 22 to 42. I would think a good start would be knowing how many we have now.
That number is available.
The chair of capital planning has that.
Does the committee wishes the chairman of the capital planning would respond to that question? Mr. Slavin, do
You want me to respond?
Yes, well, they say yes.
We have
They're all nodding, so.
We have 48 buses total. We went out and bought a 2007 bus and a 2011 bus during the summer. One bus in 2011 was a special needs multiple wheelchair bus because we're basically taking kids in wheelchairs fairly long distance. And we have 10 or 11 kids in wheelchairs and 9 whatever it is. It's pretty difficult to deal with. And I believe the town is having to hire out to Whaling City for $138,000 a year in transportation expenses for just that one bus alone. So buying a bus is about $85,000. Turns the school department around with a positive cash flow versus what they were doing before. Bottom line is the total buses we have is 50. 6 of them are in what I call the graveyard. We did have 40 before we bought 2 more. So that's what we have for total buses.
Mr. Green?
Okay, we got 56 are in the graveyard, so say we got 44.
Correct.
What I'd like to see is a plan of how are we going to replace 44 buses? Because that's what we're going to have to do to keep into service. And what we got here is 28. But, you know, some way we got to get to the 44 that we have. And I would also ask the question, you know, I hope that there's been, and I guess the town administrator has has alluded to, are looking at various options. But I would hope that we give a very serious look toward a operating lease. In other words, get out of the business of trying to run the school buses ourselves, but have somebody who's a professional at it do it themselves. And I only know from a business viewpoint where we found that leasing vehicles was a very economical solution. And I will be the first to admit that school buses, I'm sure, are different from normal cars, but I would hope that we looked at that option very closely.
Jim, just real quick, I think Sam hit it right in the head. If we had that foresight back a decade ago, even 5 years ago, and people could compile the information about the maintenance records and kind of the trending of some of the work, okay, we would have been better able, I believe, to get into the world of 7 or 10 or whatever it turns out to be. But I believe this aggressive schedule will take us out of the maintenance business, because I believe there's 2 part-time people working to fix 44 buses. I'm not sure how that works. 2 full-time, 3 part-time. 2 full-time and 3 part-time. So, once again, data drives, empirical data drives where we are, in my mind's eye, to Sam's point, we should be out of the business of maintenance. We should have the buses on a general scope of services that guarantee that we're going to get our inspection sticker on that bus, period. And if it doesn't stay on, then somebody's going to be held accountable for it. And that's the type of approach, particularly if you're going forward with, once again, what we're saying is 7 at a time, to get to a point where you're really keeping accurate records of what happens and what doesn't happen. If it wasn't for Selectman Begley and Selectman Snyder researching this matter, the town would have not known about this. We would not be at this point of understanding. We would not have this general knowledge, if you will. To Sam's point, because we should not be in that business and trying to put, you know, if you will, pardon the French, a shine on the sneaker. It's a poor situation. And we're not going to be able to recover from it unless we get into that business and get out of the maintenance business, save those costs, pour that money back into maybe another bus or half a bus or something, and get us moving in the right direction.
Mr. Paulson.
No, I was just pointing at Sam to start.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Graves, do you have a
Just
follow-up?
to clarify, what I was talking about was an operational lease where we didn't own the bus, we didn't maintain it, all we did was we go out
Paid the fee.
and we pay the lease, and they provide the buses in good shape and do the service.
Mr. Camerano?
Has anyone looked into a price to where we do nothing? A monthly? No drivers, no maintenance, no nothing, just pay the fee?
Yeah,
Right, what I'm
exactly.
telling you, has anyone ever looked into that fee?
Yes.
To know what that would cost, Mark?
To answer the question,
We used to do it.
Mr. Trudell, would you answer?
I would just say that capital planning has looked at some numbers. However, I will say that we have made our recommendations to the town administrator. We've looked at some of those numbers, Don.
Yeah.
Specifically, I can't answer. I'll just say that town administrator and capital planning are not always in agreement in this particular area, okay?
All right.
And we have beat it to death. And I know it will be beat to death this Tuesday, and I know next week, this committee is going to be out flagging the question of buses. So your question of that, I'll defer and we'll take up Tuesday morning if that's okay with you.
Is there a number out there available for that? I don't need to get it right now.
Mr. Chairman, Dominic's point,
Yep.
the reverse auction would have shown us that, because the reverse auction would have said exactly what Dominic is saying. Take the fleet, take the operations, take the lube, take the gas, take or whatever we want to hold back in some
I understand
cases.
that, but I don't want to rehash that. That's been
I'm not
heard in
saying-
so many different ways.
I'm just
Let's
saying
not
that-
rehash that here
Yes,
now.
an excellent point, and we should,
I know.
we could do that again very simply, if we had enough bidders in the process.
Mrs. Cattouli.
I'm gonna make two comments and then I'm never gonna speak on this subject ever again. One is, and I beg to differ with you, Mr. Town Administrator, that people, for 10 years didn't look ahead about this, okay? There was a transportation director who filed a report every year saying everything was just fine and she made money at it, or whatever the story was, and buses weren't being replaced. So if they don't have that information as to what the maintenance was costing them year by year by year, then shame on them, I'm sorry. That's point number one. Point number two is, and this is constructive criticism, I hope, and that is with Derek's plan here, okay? I really like it. I think that this is something that needs to be put in the simplest form possible for a PowerPoint presentation to be put right up on that board, okay? That everybody can understand. And I think that just using, I think it was 32 buses, the regular bus routes, I'm not talking about the special needs buses or any of that or whatever. What is needed to run the regular bus routes need to be included in a plan going forward for an operation of this so that the town, people of the town of Wareham can understand what this is gonna cost long term. That's my 2 points, and I'm not talking about it again.
Anyone who hasn't spoken who would like to speak? Are you all set? Mrs. Bronk? You have
No,
anything?
I'm fine.
Can we wrap this up?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I just, one quick item, to Bonnie's point, I happen to agree with you, I didn't mean to misspeak on it. I'm just saying if we had information, numbers crunched, other different methods of procurement, we've tried, different ways to look at this, operational, Lisa Sim makes excellent points to you, Mr. Chairman. I think we would be better positioned some time ago to make some decisions about this. I'm not casting any aspersions on anybody who is in a position to make a decision about it. I'm just saying that it's time to get moving on this, because otherwise we lose another year. And I've said that in other meetings, and I'll stop talking about it.
Mr. Paulson, very
This
quickly.
probably oversimplifies it, but either we do it or we go to somebody that does do it. And for somebody that does do it, we'll be looking at the same figures and say, well, it's gonna cost me a couple $1 million over 3 years for 7 of them, $6 million over how many years? He's gonna look, he or she's gonna look at the same numbers and come to pretty much the same conclusion. One way or the other, the town is gonna have to pay for it. And those numbers are, they're not necessarily cast in stone, but they're what we're facing. We don't have much choice.
Can I wrap it up?
Yes.
I'd kind of like to wrap this up if we could, because there's other people waiting, but I have one question to Mr. Sullivan, if I might. I've heard mention that there's a possibility that the school would attempt to come up with 3 buses. Now, that would work out to $39K. The question I have is, in the second year, will they have the $39K, and in the third year, will they have the $189K? Because if not, then all your numbers here would change significantly in terms of 3 additional buses. I think if you could come to capital planning Tuesday morning with that information would be helpful to us, because that may impact your costs to the town administrator. And I don't know what the answer is on that one, and I'm concerned.
Ron?
It is what it is. If we have to pay for it here, we have to pay for it there. We get, like I said, we gotta pay for it. We have to pay for it. But at least let people know what they're paying for.
Any further comments?
I would simplify it, sell everything, pay a monthly fee.
Chair will entertain a motion. Mr. Trevell,
On Article 1?
on Article 1?
But
Yes.
I would very much like to defer voting on this until capital planning has met, because I think capital planning has done a very thorough job on a lot of these items, and I would very much like to hear what their thoughts are before we vote.
All right, I'll entertain a motion, Mr. Trudeau.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to ask if we could defer action on Article 1 until the 28th, which would give capital planning on the 27th time to have had the discussion on Article 1, and then perhaps the chairman of the capital planning and myself can help you understand what our voting was on that day.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? All right, discussion. I will caution everyone. Remember, we set dates, and the dates were that we must have all our votes done by the 28th. All right, and that will only give us a couple of days to write up all our response, you know, whatever remaining responses are required for the warrant as per the town charter. Now, that doesn't mean we can't work on other things ahead of time, but we must absolutely positively be done by the 30th of September. We have to get into the printer on time because we have a public hearing on the 12th. Okay, so I'm cautioning everybody on that. All right. Anyone else have any discussion on the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? I'll abstain in this particular case. Yes.
If I could just ask you, just as a point of information to the committee, items 4 through 9 are placeholders as indicated in the explanation for pending negotiations on collective bargaining matters. We will have to go to the Board of Selectmen and to the Finance Committee, obviously, before town meeting. So if I could just ask people to understand it from that perspective. And then we have asked on item 10, water pollution control, capital improvement, and item 11, harbor master, that they be in attendance to give their perspective of what their requests are. Administration's happy to speak to them, but if we can do that at the next meeting.
That would be on the 28th. Articles 4 through 9, it's my understanding both last spring and, last fall and then last spring, monies were set aside to cover these particular articles.
Some of them.
All right, so you're saying that, well, my first question would be how much still exists that's been set aside, and then how much additional are we talking? And if these are not settled, could these not be covered the same way that they have previously in a single article saying that we set it aside, and then as these are settled, just have them brought forward?
Mr. Chairman, just for the edification and understanding, the way I understand the process to work, I'll speak for myself, is that you finish a negotiation, it is ratified by the members, it's brought to the Board of Selectmen, they can make changes, they can suggest further research or other things. It is then brought from the Board of Selectmen to the town meeting. I am suggesting that we are close in on target on a number of these. I won't go into detail tonight because I don't have the information in front of me. They are placeholders for those contracts that we can settle and will settle, and you are correct. There is a reserve account that will not handle all of the amounts on this sheet, depending upon how they play out. But that process will be going forward. We didn't want to miss a town meeting in order to get these collective bargaining matters settled through that process.
Okay, I fully understand that. The caution I would give you, our meeting's on the 28th. Whatever is completed by then, we will vote on it. If it's not completed, it will have to fall under whatever amount's been set aside, or unless you want to introduce it. Well, I don't even know if you can put another article in to increase the amount. All right, I mean, that's all I can say is I cannot see us going to the town meeting and asking the citizens of the town to approve any of these articles with no numbers.
Mr. Chairman, I understand.
We get lynched.
Mr. Chairman, I understand. But
Just you.
The committee has to understand.
Yes.
We're trying to make certain and give the process its it's due.
I fully understand. These are placeholders tonight, but next Wednesday night, they must either have numbers or they will not be presented, correct, at the town meeting?
That's what you say, Mr. Chairman, that's the way it's gonna go?
Yeah, I guess you can present them, but they will not come with any votes from us if we don't have them by the 28th. I'm
Understand?
not getting down to the last 5 hours before the town meeting and then suddenly finding out we don't have resolutions. That's happened in the past. And we are obligated on every article that's related to finances to make a written recommendation, which we will be doing. And I can't be doing that in the last 5 minutes before the meeting. There's a stipulation that says that report has to be written 7 days in advance. That's simple.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Town Administrator.
You're welcome. If I can make one other observation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're going to be talking about Article 2, but if it's okay with you, Derek and I will do ourselves, not Article 2, excuse me. Article 3. I just want to be on the record as saying to you that Article 3 is not needed because we've already done what Article 3 does in Article 1. We have taken into consideration and we have spoken and worked closely with the superintendent. People can vote any way they want. I'm just trying to let people understand where I'm coming from, that the distribution of local funds, this question came up on the floor of town meeting, and the answer that was given is you need a home rule petition to pass in order to govern the future use of any revenue. And what I'm saying to you, just for the record, that in Article number 1, we've already done that. This is a local exercise of governance, in my opinion. That local exercise of governance is something that I don't feel that we need to give up through any process. I don't think we need to send anything to Boston to say we want to split it this way or that way or some other way. Frankly, to be quite honest with you, I'm afraid of formulas because 20 years ago, the state took up a formula, not to get too far afield, about how we're going to fund education in the state. And if anybody at the table can tell me how well that worked out in a positive way, I'd be hard pressed to say to you that we've made some strides, but there's not, in my opinion, a formula that can ensure success in the classroom or success with regards to capital. I just want to be on the record with regards to that, and I'm happy to answer any questions for you. But the idea is that if we do Article number 3, it's going to radically change what happens in Article number 1, so that everybody's on the same page.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a question?
McDonald?
Through you, Chair? Where did the idea of the revenue being split 50-50 come from? Through you, Mr. Andrews?
Mr. McDonald, I think in the early days of this, and don't forget, just for people's understanding, the local meals program didn't pass, I think, 2 times previous at town meeting. I don't want any of the credit for it. I just want to be able to say, I think what your question is asking, you know, why do we need a formula to tell us how we're going to split it up? What if in one year the school needs 12 buses and we need to do something different than what we're doing on the town side? That's a local option that we need to maintain locally.
No,
I'm not sure exactly where it came from, but I'm giving my impression.
That's what I'm trying to find out is where this, I mean, somewhere, somebody had to say 50-50 somewhere online, and
I can
again,
answer that.
okay, well, but I'm new to the FinCom, and before I make a decision, I said, I need to know where that came from.
To answer the question, Mrs. Bronk.
Sorry.
That came basically from the FinCom, because the FinCom was a big supporter, and it was basically Mrs. Donahue was really trying to get this through. And we talked about it, and we talked about the capital needs, and we could possibly sell it to the town meeting, because it did go down in flames twice, if we told them it would, because we had had so much work done by the capital improvements committee. We told them what we needed, and this is one of the only ways we had to generate. We could use it for that. So we basically sold this bill to town meeting with the intent that it's going to go for that.
Mr. Trudell?
It's called salesmanship.
Gotcha.
And the town was sold a bill of goods. And there's no other way to put it. It was a feel-good, gee, let's do this. Now, there are two members of this committee, I won't mention Mrs. Cattrulli and Mr. Trudell, I won't mention them by name. But there are two people on this committee who voted against that on the general principle. And because we knew it would go in the general fund and it would be split. So it's called salesmanship.
Okay.
But I didn't think that was gonna happen. I didn't.
I didn't want to mention anybody.
Well, I'm never gonna ask another question.
All right, thank
That's
you,
why it went down in flames though, both times.
if we may. Any other questions, I guess, for the town administrator before he
Is
leaves?
the TA running off?
Yes, he is.
Okay, can I ask one question forward on something, just before he runs off, just because I think I need an answer before I go forward with it?
Yes.
This boom truck for, water pollution control.
He just addressed that. We're gonna have the,
I can answer the question.
well, you're gonna
I
have
know
them in
it
next
moves.
week,
I just
right?
wanna know, if it's specifically for use only by the water pollution control facility, or is it used as a general town vehicle?
We'll have to check with the director, but I know they've shared equipment in the past, so I wouldn't be surprised if we couldn't do that going forward.
Okay, well, I would want an answer to that question before I decided on whether I wanted this boom truck or not.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Trudell?
The real issue on the boom truck,
Yeah,
it's a safety factor.
I understand that, that's
So-
not my point.
Well, but my
Okay,
point
I'll
is,
get to my
we can say no, but when the guy gets crushed down below,
Well, again, all to be discussed on the 28th, as far as that particular article, and also the harbor master, yes. Mr. Campino will be here, and Mr.
Yes.
Buckman.
If I could ask Kelly to assist me in inviting both Mr. Campino and Mr. Buckminster.
I'll send him the invitation. I've been inviting everybody. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You all set?
Yes, I am. Pardon?
Voting on three, or we put that off as well?
We're putting off the three right now. Mr. Persevich has been very, very patient tonight,
Okay.
but I know he likes to know what's happening in town, so I figured he would.
want to take a 5-minute break.
No, because he's going to be speaking as well.
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna hit the menu.
Yes, okay. Mr. Persevich?
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and stuff. Thank you, Mr. Town Administrator,
Mr. Chairman, my pleasure.
as always.
Negative returns on that, you know that, right? We'll talk later.
Article 20. Mr. Persevich, I'd like to start with your citizens petition article first, which will be article number 22.
Right.
All right, the town meeting doesn't have very often citizens participation articles.
Okay, this is a very simple article. What it requires is that anything that's distributed at the town meeting will have the name of the person, group, company, organization on the information to be distributed. Basically, what I saw, especially at the last town meeting, there were handouts that were being handed out that were very similar to documentation that I had seen previously that were outside the town of Wareham and didn't have anything to do with individuals in the town of Wareham, yet the stuff was being distributed to the town meeting. So that's all we're doing here is it's a transparency type issue to people at the town meeting will know who's distributing this and they can make their own decisions on how they want to take the information. Be happy to answer any questions if you.
I have a motion for favorable action.
Question.
No, I need a motion first. I have a motion for favorable
I'll make a
action.
motion. Second.
You have a second? Mr. Gray second, and Mr. McDonald made the motion. Discussion? Mr. Paulson, it's your favorite subject.
Well, I'll ask some questions, so we'll look at it.
You defer? Mr. McDonald? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if you might.
But this doesn't eliminate people from distributing that information anyways.
No.
So they're gonna distribute it anyways, whether it has their name on it or not. I think you should really go forward and try to eliminate information, made it illegal to, well, not illegal, maybe that's the wrong word, but it cannot be distributed without their name on it.
Well,
That eliminates if they distribute it, if it's got the name on it or not, people are gonna read it.
Exactly.
So you should eliminate it. You cannot distribute any information without a name on it. That would be a better way to put it, in my opinion.
What does
It's
it
the same
matter?
thing.
No, because what if they distribute it?
The answer to the question.
Go ahead.
Yes.
To answer the question, first of all, everything that's being distributed has to be reviewed by the town moderator.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this adds another level to that, okay? That if they don't have their name on it, it's not gonna be distributed. So they have to identify themselves. Now, if the town moderator okays the distribution and they have their town, and they have their name on it, then it would be okay. But I think to say, what you're trying to get to is to say, no, you can't distribute it because you're not from the town of Wareham. I think then you get into free speech issues, you get into all of those other things. And the idea that we had behind this was, if something's distributed in town meeting, the residents, the town voters should know where it's coming from.
Mr. Brown?
I don't support this because I believe that the town moderator does have to approve it. And I do believe that individuals will go after and target people for putting their name down. And I don't want to see that happen to people. I've seen it happen to too many people. They get written up for this, get written up. If you're not thinking the same way one group thinks, or this group, or that way, people are fairly vicious and they go after people. I don't want anybody to be afraid to say what they have, be afraid for their job. Some people's jobs have been threatened for things they've said. And I don't want to see that happen.
Mr. Cotilli?
I understand the petitioner's reason for doing this. I had picked up several pamphlets and didn't understand what the source of the information, okay? And I think that is what's misleading, that there is some information that is distributed that you don't understand the source of it, you don't understand where the research has come. And let's face it, Madam Moderator isn't going to stand there and go and research every single document that's put before her, okay? She doesn't have the time for that. Well, unless somebody is going to give this information with full documentation, copyright and everything else on it, then it's either you can't distribute it or you need to at least provide the source of the information and where it's coming from.
Mr. McDonald?
I'm a nosy sort, don't get me wrong, I mean, I'd love to see everybody's name on this, but when I pick up a brochure, when I go to town meeting, I pick up a brochure, I read the brochure, I don't really care who put it out. If it has something to do with what we're talking about and I read it, either makes sense or it doesn't. And I think we're adding a layer that we don't need. I think the town meeting is under the guidance of the town moderator, and I don't really, I mean, it gives her the right to put it on there, and now we're gonna have, I guess we want to call them town meeting police that says if they don't have a name and that thing on it, they're gonna take them and throw them all in the trash. You know, people aren't sheep. They're going to look at stuff and they're gonna make decisions based on that. They're gonna vote on that. So I don't support this either, for that reason only.
Mr. Trudell?
Two questions to you, Mr. Chairman. Has the town moderator been asked if there is a issue here, and is there anything in her moderator's book, if you will, that deals with this subject? And number two, the point that I'd like to make is, since I wasn't here for your presentation, when I go on the internet, I can find all kinds of information. I can find people that don't believe World War II happened. And they sit down and they put out a publication that World War II didn't happen. And if you want to believe that it didn't happen, okay, you believe it didn't happen. But the problem is, they don't sign their name with anything that says this. If I tried that in college and just sat down and started quoting people but said, I can't give you the references, you know, after the professor stopped laughing, he'd be saying, right, Dave, okay, F minus. To there is a trade-off between being able to identify someone saying, if capital planning wants to put out a statement that says we don't agree with the town administrator, who's on the capital planning and who was there. There is some validity to it, because I just find too many things out there that don't have anybody attributing to anything, and that's, like I say, the extreme is the example I gave you, that it's out there.
Mr. Chairman.
Does Claire have any?
Mr. Pasevich?
Two things. One is, I did send an email to the town moderator regarding the specific issues of identifying authors of distributors. And the town moderator, I appreciate your concerns, thank you. The other issue that's involved in all this is open and transparent government and what's going on. And you've seen the laws change on open meetings now, where they all have to be taped, where everybody has access to this, so everybody knows what's going on. And the idea being is, specifically for examples, stuff that was distributed at last town meeting was from the Cape Cod Canal Chamber of Commerce. It was exactly the same document with no name or any attribution to a document that was distributed at town meeting. Now, would somebody at town meeting, the voters, would they want to know where that came from? I think they would, and that's the idea behind this.
Mr. Paulson?
I thought you were asking a question of the town moderator.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was.
I'd like to get
But-
her.
But if I may interrupt,
Mm-hmm.
my point was, I asked the chairman if the town moderator had anything to do with that.
Would the town moderator have some comment, actually, two questions, comment about this specifically, and has this procedure been used in other towns that she knows of?
I was gonna ask the moderator, but I was gonna let us finish our conversation first, and let her hear our discussion, but do you wish to make a comment at this time?
No comment.
No comment on her
Has it
part.
been used in other towns?
She said no comment, Mr. Paulson. I mean, give her a break.
I understand it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mrs. Bronk?
I think the town of Wareham has had a pretty much, I mean, I wouldn't put a document out without putting my name on it. I don't have any problems about that. But I don't work for the town, and I don't depend on my living from the town. And I don't really care what anybody says, to tell you the truth. But a lot of folks do, and they have some good information, but they're scared to say anything. I believe that the town moderator has always approved what should be put out and what should not be put out. And I believe that we're stepping on toes that there are no need to step on.
Mr. McDonald?
I'll try one more time. I would encourage people to put their name on it, because like Donna, believe me, the last thing I'm worried about is somebody coming back at me first. I'll put my name on everything. That's pretty much what I do. So I'm not worried about it, but there are people that have that fear, and I would encourage people, but I don't think I would make it law that they needed to put their name on it, because I think it really comes down to the choice or for the town moderator, because she is the authority figure at town meeting, and I don't want to take that away from her, that is the town meeting and she's the authority figure. She's going to make the decisions on that, and I think that's fair. Maybe that's something she can address, another way.
She wishes not to address it in open forum.
Okay.
Still taking a call.
Mrs. Cotilli?
My only problem with this is that there has been misleading information on those desks, okay? I mean, I can sit there and print out anything, facts and figures and numbers or whatever, and say, this is my study of such and such, you want to vote this way, and leave it on that desk. If the town moderator can't sit there and identify or research my facts and figures to know whether they're right or they're wrong, well, heck, let's, So people are looking at this, they're picking that up and thinking, oh wow, this is the information, look at this, look at this, look at this, and they're influenced by that. And if I am not willing to put the source of my information on that piece of paper, there's something wrong with that. All right, so I don't think that any sort of material that has that kind of information needs to have a source of information, whether it's the person who can stand up in town meeting and say, you know, hey, I got this out front, would somebody, you know, mind explaining what this is all about?
What's the town moderator show?
Are there any new comments to the conversation? Yeah, but I would have to ask the committee if you would allow Mr. Begley to make a comment. Anybody object? Mr. Begley, if you would, because it's not your article.
David, yeah, I know. David Begley, Clean Water Committee. I just wanted to say that when you speak before a town meeting, the first thing you do is give your name. The material that's put out on that desk is speaking to town meeting. That's all I'm gonna say.
Any other further comments, Mr. McDonald? Do you have any further? Seeing no further comments, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I'm on the account. All those in favor? Opposed? Votes 3-5.
What was it?
3-5.
3-5?
3-4. This is affirmative action. 3-4, 5 against.
Any date on this here?
Yes,
Missing one.
we're missing one.
Oh, you earlier it was 7, because that was before that got here, that's why you confused me, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
That's why I didn't ask for abstention, so it has your count. The article from the Clean Water, please.
Sure. Mr. Paulson's passing down the changes that are in the current bylaw for earth removal were generated from Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 21, and that's what's coming around to now. It's item 17. 17. It's item 17. Oh, no, the article is 20.
Thank
The
you.
article's 20.
No, it's
No, it's
Article
18.
18, earth removal regulation.
Yep, everybody's got a copy of that. Okay. And what these, and it's fine, just, I'll read the explanation to you. As it says, it's being generated by Chapter 40, Section 21, Item 17.
This says 21.
Yeah, Section 21, Item 17.
Item 17.
Item 17. Okay. Clearly define the meaning of earth removal, which there's been a question about in this town. And we take the example right out of the law of what the definition of earth removal is. To protect our drinking water by prohibiting earth removal activities in Zone 2 as identified on the town of Wareham zoning map. Zone 2 is the recharge area for the Plymouth Carver Aquifer. Zone 2 has been scientifically identified as the area in which rain passes through the ground and enters the aquifer. The sand in this area filters the rainwater before it enters the aquifer, removing many of the pollutants. Earth removal activities in Zone 2 could adversely affect the purity of our drinking water. Does everybody know where Zone 2 is?
I don't.
Okay. This is a map of the aquifer, and it shows Wareham here. And this orange blob, which goes outside of Wareham, but comes down into Wareham, is Zone 2. And that's where the water actually goes through the ground and enters the aquifer. I'll pass this around so you get a good look. The gray dots are the actual wells, and the rest of the Wareham is not part of Zone 2. It's only that area there that they've scientifically identified as areas where the water recharges the aquifer. Okay? So we understand what recharging is, and the idea being is that the sand that's there, as the rainwater goes through it, it gets filtered and purified.
So that's down by the Buzzards Bay area? Is that,
It goes all the way down just below 28.
Okay, so, but the part of Wareham that's being affected is,
Find the part he was talking about.
It starts right around where the onset wells are down, what do you call it, by the Salvation Army.
oh, okay. All right,
Okay, that's
okay,
where you
yeah.
are, right there at the
Okay.
bottom of it.
Yeah.
And it goes all the way up to where the Maple Springs wells are,
Oh, okay.
okay?
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
All right.
Mr. Mr. Trudell. Confused the two of you.
Through you. I got to part 17.
Yeah.
But I didn't get to the part where recharging aquifer and everything else. Did I miss a document here?
No, no. Article 17 allows the town, if you read it, first of all, it gives you a definition of earth removal, and it allows the town to regulate it in whole or in part in any specific district in town. So what we're talking about here is eliminating, if you look at the actual bylaw, it's eliminating earth removal in Zone 2. And so the law allows you to do that.
So what you're saying is, you're quoting this section 21, subpart 17, and then you're going into the bylaw. Is that-
Correct. We're using this as a basis to make the changes in the bylaw. So what's written in Article 17, you'll see reflected in the actual bylaw.
Okay, so do we have a copy of what you're proposing to change to the bylaw? Because you just read me something about the aquifer, and since I don't have a handle on that, and
Well,
we're getting a map.
I thought everybody had a copy, but if you don't, I have copies right here.
Thank you.
And the only changes that we're making to the bylaw are those that are in bold print. The rest of the bylaw is remaining unchanged.
Thank you.
Okay?
This is, I have this in the first one.
Okay? I don't, it should be.
No, what do you mean? Okay. It is the
It
same
is the
thing.
same thing. You don't have a copy of the bylaw there?
No, I just took the,
That's the law. I assumed you already had the bylaw. You
I
don't.
don't do
Oh,
it.
okay,
It was
you
in the
don't.
original book, you guys can have a
Oh,
separate copy.
If anybody needs one, they're there.
Okay.
Mr. Paulson.
Do you need more? Anybody else need one?
No, I'll take it.
Mr. Paulson.
Yeah. Last time.
Anybody else need? Okay.
I understand. You know, I hear the word scientific. Scientific has a meaning to it. It sounds very official and very specific. But is there any evidence at all that would indicate that the aquifer is in some way being jeopardized by virtue of whatever is being done or not being done above it? I see no figures to that prove that.
Did he answer the question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, when I said scientifically, the Zone 2 has been identified scientifically, and that's by doing tests and see where the water comes through. What we're trying to do is to prevent the removal of the sand, which is a filter, which also has been scientifically identified, from being removed from Zone 2. And there are areas currently right now, one permitted, one unpermitted, that are earth removal operations in Zone 2.
I guess if I might just to continue this, and I apologize for not being as clear as I should have been. Is there any evidence that exists today that suggests or proves that there is some issue with the aquifer because of the earth removal that's taking place currently?
No.
There's nothing that, okay, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do this, I'm just asking if there's evidence.
Mr. Trudell?
since we're talking about sand removal, if you will, so by definition, I'm assuming that we are talking about,
Can you say that now, Beth, please?
by definition, we're talking about people who probably run bogs or own this land, per se. Somebody has to own the land.
Somebody has to own the land, but just to answer your question, through the chairman, it's got nothing to do with bogs.
Okay, but somebody does own the land
Yeah.
at this point. So, in a way, we are saying that if I own land that I could normally sell for sand and gravel, I'm going to be restricted in my capacity to conduct a business in selling sand and gravel if I'm within this particular area. And that means that as a landowner, I can have somebody take away a means of income from me And I say this because I have a brother-in-law that's sitting on a significant sand and gravel deposit on the other end of the state. He's not using it, but his neighbor is selling it. Now, the point being, his neighbor is making money selling sand and gravel. We make a change, then, as an example, his neighbor wouldn't be able to sell that sand and gravel. So, is that fair to the landowner?
Can I answer the question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The Massachusetts general law allows the towns to regulate and prohibit earth removal in total, which some towns do, don't have any earth removal allowed at all, on specific areas. And that's what this bylaw is doing. And the purpose it's doing that for is to protect Zone 2. So yes, and that is provided for in the law, that's why I gave it to you.
Okay.
And Mr. McDonald? I'm sorry, Bonnie, did you?
I don't know if you want to, let me just, I did find, where it says zone 2, this part I got here, so it's right, you know, right on the front here. My question is way over here, if I can get to section 5. You're looking at an addition, if I'm reading this right, you're saying the bold print is additions, correct?
Correct.
Where you get to, and the restriction prohibiting any earth removal within 10 feet of the seasonal high water table on any land in the town of Wareham, except for the installation of utilities and other exemptions granted under section da-da-da-da-da. What are you talking about by seasonal high water table?
Okay. Currently, the requirements by DEP is that you can't remove earth within 5 feet of the seasonal high water table. And the seasonal high water table is, they drive a pipe down into the ground, and the pipe, they determine what the water table is. They say seasonal because you have to do it in the season that you're doing it, because the water table goes up and goes down according to seasons, wintertime, summertime, rainfall, snow, all of that. So they determine that when they're actually doing the project. And so this would eliminate from going down 5 feet within the water table to 10 feet within the water table. And the purpose of that is also to put some more dirt between the water table and the excavation of the earth in order to clean it. Basically, and that would be for all earth removal in the town. So you got another point there, if answering your question. We're only prohibiting earth removal in Zone 2. The rest of the town is open to earth removal. There's no stipulations, provided you get a permit.
Mr. McDonald?
Protecting our drinking water, correct?
Yeah.
All right. Have you had discussions before the article with Water District?
To answer the question?
Yes, please.
The Onset Fire District has voted unanimously to support this article and the changes. And we've just had a current meeting with the Wareham Fire District, Water District, and we'll be getting a letter of support from them shortly.
So they've already voted?
They haven't taken a vote with the Wareham Fire District. The Onset did vote.
Okay.
And they voted unanimously in favor.
All right, that was my question.
Okay.
Okay, Martin,
10 feet of the seasonal high water table in the land in the town of Wareham. Can't you basically say that that is probably the whole town? Okay?
No, not at all.
Well, okay. Gotta be at least 90% of the whole town would not meet, would be in that requirement.
Did he answer the question, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman? The current non-permitted earth removal operation in Zone 2 took out a 43-foot hill. They took out approximately 400,000 cubic yards and never got below ground level.
last night's selectmen's meeting, there was a question arose that there was information needed from the attorney.
Yes, to answer the question, if you look at the, next to the last page
Of which document first?
of the, I'm sorry, of the actual bylaw, there's a change, there's a bold print. I mean, it goes through page after page, but you'll see existing operations 1, and then it goes to 2. Okay, so one small paragraph. It says, any and all existing earth removal activities located in Zone 2 shall cease all earth removal activities within 30 days of the effective date of this bylaw. Restoration of the earth removal activity shall be completed within 1 year of the effective date of this bylaw. The question was raised, if I'm a permitted earth removal operation and I'm in Zone 2, is it legal to shut this off within 30 days? In other words, to tell you you have to stop. Our position on the Clean Water Committee is very simple. You were issued a permit based on this bylaw. The bylaw changed. There's no grandfathering in the general bylaw. The zoning bylaws have grandfathering, but not general bylaws. So once it's effective, you've got 30 days to shut down your operation in Zone 2. The legal, it's being reviewed by town council, that specific issue, and if they seem to have a problem, we don't have a problem about amending that to say within 30 days or when your permit runs out, whichever is later, which is similar language that I've seen previously. That's the issue that they were talking about, nothing about the other changes.
Okay. In light of that, I would think that we would postpone a vote until the 28th. Go ahead, Don.
I just have a question. Is this actually gonna put people out of business? Is this gonna put people out of work?
One operation, it may, yeah. It may.
Who is it?
Graziano. Graziano has a pit in Zone 2.
Okay.
I didn't finish, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to finish before we seem to get into the questions quick. Number 4 on the explanation treats all property owners equally by eliminating an agricultural exemption which has been abused and for which there is no basis in governing in Chapter 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws. What I didn't mention, and it just dawned on me, and I don't know why I didn't mention it, this is a revenue-generating article, and these changes are going to increase the revenue generated immensely. Immensely for the town.
How is that?
How is that specifically? You have an unpermitted operation up at the top of Maple Springs. They took out 400,000 cubic yards. If you look at the existing bylaw, which we didn't change, the town's supposed to get 25 cents a cubic yard that's removed. That's $100,000. And because they said that they were agriculture, they were exempt, we didn't get a nickel.
Mr. Paulson?
Well, I'll let Larry go first, because he lives over there, and then I have a question.
Right. We are approaching the hour of 10 as well.
Well, you want me to make a motion to go past 10, or is that what you need, or something?
We have a few more minutes.
Okay, I just, how do
Just say it.
no, it's not quite that simple to me. Does he own this land, this gravel, this dirt he's taken out of there? He owns it, correct?
It's on his property.
It's on his
It's on his
property.
property, absolutely.
Okay, and if we have, and my understanding from reading the Plymouth, whatever, Aquifer Group thing, we have some of the most stringent water, drinking water protection ordinances in the state of Massachusetts. And if we already, and matter of fact, I don't remember the man's name, and I will come up with it before next meeting, said towns that put in ordinances to protect their drinking water use Wareham as a guideline. I can't believe that we need to go to this extreme. If we're already one of the top ones in the states, why do we need to go this extra point? And what are we accomplishing? Because we're eliminating revenue from earth removal permits, where we may or may not be, and we don't have that answer yet. Open ourselves up to liability. And maybe, I guess what I'm asking is, can we get someone from the water district to sit down and talk to us?
If the committee would like, we can invite somebody to come in on the 28th.
The answer to the question?
Sure.
First of all, you're not eliminating anything that's involved in the permits as far as earth removal, because you're going to be getting more permits. The vast majority of earth removal that's going on right now is unpermitted in the town. Second of all, you're getting the 25 cents per cubic yard. Third of all, number 17 gives you the exemptions allowed by Massachusetts general law, and they are very specific. And they're right there. Any order or bylaw prohibiting such removal hereon shall not apply to any soil, loam, sand, or gravel which is subject of a permit, license issued under the authority of the town, or by the appropriate licensing board of such town, or by the Board of Appeal, or which is to be removed in compliance with the requirements of subdivision plans approved by the town planning. Those are the exemptions provided by law. I don't see anything about cranberry bogs.
Mr. Paulson?
You try to take care of problems that exist, and you try to take care of problems that are going to be preemptive. I asked the question before, and I want to make sure that I didn't put words in Eddie's mouth. There's nothing, and this is a question now, there's nothing currently that indicates that there's any deleterious effect on the aquifer by virtue of activities that are taking place or have taken place to this point in time.
Okay, to answer the question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
No, there isn't, but you have to use a little common sense in here. If you start to remove the sand that's filtering, and you remove enough of it, you're gonna have a problem. Because what's gonna happen is, the polluted water, the rain, will start to enter the aquifer. So this is a preemptive strike, because if you remove too much of that land in zone 2, you're gonna punch a hole, which is gonna allow polluted water to enter the aquifer.
Mr. Paulson?
Well, that was going to be the second part of my question, and I'll make it as brief as possible. Yes, it is common sense. It's what you're saying is it's preemptive, which is good. I have no problem with something being preemptive. I understand that. But we apparently have some, if I understand Larry correctly, we have some rules and regulations in place from the state level, apparently, that are fairly rigorous and would probably alert us to potential problems before they became more serious problems. That's my observation.
Did he answer the question, Mr. Chairman?